evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the fourth race in the second round for the 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series, live from iRacing's virtual Rockingham Speedway in Rockingham, North Carolina. I'm James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports, alongside Josh Lee, our analyst Jeff McConey, and our producer, as always, for the evening, Ryan Bauer. The cameras, as always, developed by Dougie Beer, Justin Prince down on pit road. This is a test tonight, Josh. I don't think there's any other way to describe it, because Rockingham is one of the most difficult ovals that we go to in the sim year in, year out. It's not the biggest, it's not the smallest, it's not the fastest, it's not the slowest, but the sense of speed that you get here is so great that you feel like you're basically racing at a gigantic Bristol where everything moves just as fast as it does at Bristol, if not more so. This is a place where you have to be on your toes. Never mind the fact that you've got to watch the tire wear too, because this place will chew your Goodyear Eagles up.
Well, talking about Rockingham, it really is, in all sense of the word, a short track. It is only just a slight bit more than a mile long. You can compare it to Dover, compare it to Bristol. I'd even throw comparisons to Martinsville at certain points of this track, but it races like an intermediate. You can race from the bottom to the top. Multiple lanes on this racetrack can be used throughout the duration of these tire and fuel runs. The question is, which lane is going to chew up the tires the most, and who is going to have the best tires throughout these long runs? We could see a good amount of long runs tonight, or we could see a lot of cautions and not a huge need on the tires to be wearing throughout a run, but only time is going to tell. C Open was not at Rockingham this week. They're at a completely different track. This is exclusive to Road to Pro, meaning everybody's been in single car test sessions or private hosted sessions in iRacing. This is a complete mystery to these drivers. They have almost nothing to go off of except their own testing.
There are also plenty of strategy plays that you can make here, depending on when we get cautions and how this race plays out. Jeff McConey, I have to believe that this race is going to be an absolute field day for you and your number crunching abilities.
Oh, it's going to be a ton of fun behind the scenes here. There's a couple different ways that you can go about it. Some drivers have been talking about two pit stops in the race and 3 pit stops in the race. Now, it depends how much you want to gamble. If you are out here, you're comfortable in points, you're Donovan Strauss, Briar LaPrade up near the top, make it a 3-stop race. You know, pit at 50, 100, 150 with how often how quickly these tires wear out. It's a 200 lap race. Break it up into 3 segments. But if you are further back in the points, you need a big night, you need a win, you can go and try and be risky here, 75, 150 pit. So we'll see how it ends up working out, but there's a lot of different ways that you can cut this cake. It's going to be a very interesting night down on pit road, and I think Justin Prince is going to have a lot of information for us, so I hope his pencil and pen are ready there. His notebook is going to be full.
This race could also be very pivotal to the point standings as we take a look at where we are and the calendar. You see your race winners and the upcoming schedule. And Josh Lee, we've got some races that will throw you for a loop, because you got 4 different tracks that you're working with there to close out this Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series season for 2020. You can't really approach them the exact same way.
We mentioned Bristol, comparing it here to Rockingham, so you can take a little bit of similarities in between these two tracks. But you talk about Texas, that's coming out of left field. We haven't really been to an intermediate track like Texas since Charlotte back in round number 1, and Phoenix is completely different to any other track we've been to on the calendar. Right now, it looks like Donovan Strauss has been handling each of these tracks in round number 2 the best, but Briar LaPrade is still there, Cody Bias is still there, Kyle Peddle, Jordi Lopez Jr. all still in the running for that top 5, and you can go down as far as that cut line. And a lot of these drivers are still running fairly consistent, but they need to keep it up over these last 4 rounds.
Work to be done for some of the folks that are a little bit further back in the field. You take another look here at the folks who are just outside the cutoff line, and plenty of work for these drivers to do. Jeff McConey.
Absolutely, and like I said, it's going to be all sorts of different strategies here. If you are inside versus outside, you need to pretty much average a top 10 finish across all these races. So if you are doing really, really well, like Donovan Strauss has been, you're not too worried. But if you're further back, yeah, this is where you start to sweat a little bit. This is where you get nervous and start saying, okay, it's time to perform. We really need to make something happen one way or another.
Let's get to know this Rockingham Speedway a little bit better by showing you where in the world we are, courtesy of our friends at Google Earth. You see everything that went down at Watkins Glen in upstate New York 2 weeks ago, and we head south from the Finger Lakes region in New York, about maybe 600, 700 miles or so to the Sand Hills of North Carolina. We're not terribly far away from the golfing capital of North Carolina, Pinehurst, home to more than a few U.S. Opens and the new USGA headquarters. You go a little bit down US 1, you'll come across this Rockingham Speedway, Josh.
And this speedway is so unique in the history of NASCAR. 2001, first race after Dale Earnhardt's tragic death. Steve Park got the win for Dale Earnhardt Incorporated. 2004, the final NASCAR Cup Series race here. Photo finish between Matt Kenseth and Casey Kane coming to the line. 2013 was the last time NASCAR raced here with the Truck Series, and it will be returning to racing with the Cars Tour on November 6th of this season. Winningest driver, Richard Petty in the real life with 11 wins. Not sure who the winningest driver is here at Rockingham in the sim, but we're going to need some good drivers out there on the course today to take that win.
Jeff McConey, what's your strategy look like? What are you thinking the ideal things are to note? And what are the things that crew chief should be aware of entering tonight?
Well, it's a 200-lap race. This is a long event. We're going to be here for a while. You have no quick repairs in this Road to Pro Series. You have 5 sets of tires laying in the pits. If there's cautions, you're going to use all of them. But if there's not too many cautions and we're staying green, and since Evan isn't up here, I think there's a good chance of that. Fingers crossed. Really hoping for some green flag racing here tonight. You're going to break it up, if you are safe in points, into 3 pit stops. You pit at 50, 100, and 150 when these tires wear out, because they wear out quickly. The tire fall off is going to be unbelievable. If you're further back and you need to make something happen, you have to roll the dice a little bit. You're going to pit at 75 and 150, and that's assuming it stays green. But if you're running more than 15, 20 laps on a set of tires and there's a caution, I think you're going to want to come down and pit. You got 5 sets of tires, you're going to use all of them if the caution flag flies.
And there may be a case, Jeff, where you may want to try and save those tires for a late race restart at the end. This is the kind of track where if you burn your stuff up early and you leave no tires for a late race restart, even if it's maybe 2-3 laps, you could get punted out of the way and lose 5 to 10 positions. Depending on where you are in the point standings, those could be some very valuable spots that you lose. It could make the difference between whether or not you make top 20 at the end of this Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series or not.
You've got that exactly right. So pretty much across all the races, you want to finish top 10. That's your goal. Every single race, you want to finish top 10 because there's 2 splits, 10 drivers from each, so 20 drivers advance, 10 from each split. You really want to make sure that you're finishing top 10 each and every week. So you got to roll the dice a little bit, and if you save that set of tires and there is a green-white checkered, like you said, even if it's only 3 or 4 laps, you're going to want that fresh set, and you can really gain some positions there at the end. But hey, we've seen crazier things happen. You can run all over this racetrack. Every line is one that can be used, and every line is one that will be used. People are even debating on you throw in the clutch, a little bit more tape, and you clutch your way into the corners, and that's their only advantage. Some people are trying everything. You want the kitchen sink? Let's throw the whole kitchen at this track because some people need a big night.
Let's take a look at our starting grid tonight. Derek Bordeaux sets the fast time with a 23.480 second lap to take pole over Parker Retzloff. Casey Tucker, Dylan Alt up near the front as well, along with Drew Freenage and Colin Keister. 6 drivers there, Josh Lee, who have had plenty of speed in this series so far.
And Garrett Conrad, Dylan Jones going to share that 4th row. Brian Lockwood, he was the road course specialist, got the win 2 weeks ago at Watkins Glen. He's got Kyle Peddle to his outside. Colin Bowden, Kenny Brady going to share the 6th row, running out that top 12.
Starting in row number 7, Michael Grillo alongside him, Agnell Phillip. Then behind them, Justin Bolt and Daniel Everhart, followed by Blake McCandless and Seth Noel, rounding out row number 9.
Row 10 is where you'll find Briar LaPrade, the Bird, who got the victory at Homestead, Miami earlier in this round, is back there, as is Brian Blackford, Mitchell Hunt, Connor Horn, and Nick Morse racing to try and extend his sim racing career out of the outside of row 12.
Going back further from there, Patrick Moose going to start to the inside of row 13. Jeremy Davis to his outside. Max Brady, Michael Finlayson going to share that 14th row. Santiago Tires and Eddie Kerner share the 15th row. Tires, the last driver to take time in qualifying, and Michael Frisch, Brad White, Frank DeAngelis going to round out the 17 rows in the 33 cars getting ready to take the green flag.
33 cars going to make it happen tonight. 77 degrees Fahrenheit air temp in Sin. Track temp is 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds are headed to the west at 7 miles an hour. In Sim, it is currently July 31st, 2021, so a few Saturdays to go. The in-sim time is right around 3:45 p.m. Eastern Time, which then explains and makes that 113 Fahrenheit track temp number make a lot of sense, Jeff McConey. But for late-breaking stories from pit road before we go green flag racing, let's turn it down for the first time this evening to our very own Justin Prince.
And to emphasize one of the points mentioned by Jeff McConey, that drivers will be racing in multiple different lines, that was a recent change as part of some of the iRacing updates to how the grip levels are around the circuit, moving that preferred groove from mostly towards the bottom line to being able to maneuver from the bottom to the middle to the top lines. And multiple different teams told me they spent plenty of time rebuilding their setups from the ground up as a result of those changes. But the constant is the same. They are all looking forward to the opportunity to see how those different lines come into play and battle those various changes throughout the day today.
Looking forward to seeing how it pans out as Derek Bordeaux will be your leader coming to this initial green flag. The pace car will pull off of the banking here at Rockingham Speedway, and we will get set for action. 200 laps here on Podium Esports as the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series comes to you from Rockingham. I was about to say that they had managed to get in a line very quickly off that first lap, and then all of a sudden, Colin Keister decided to drop to the inside and make a move on Dylan Alt to take over that fourth position. So Keister will move his number 33 truck up a spot into the top 5, Josh Lee.
They continue to fight further back. Keister now working off of turn number 4, trying to keep Drew Farinage now behind him, as well as Dylan Alt. And you go on board with Alt now. He won the second split race 1 week ago at 2 weeks ago, at Watkins Glen. So he's looking to try and go back to back this time in the top split of Road to Pro. To the bottom of the racetrack goes Colin Bowden, Colin Keister's teammate at Space Station Gaming. You're looking up at the battle between himself and Brian Lockwood on board the 15 of Michael Guerrilli as they come across the stripe.
This is a good battle here for Guerrilli, the man out of the total advantage camp, deep in the thick of this, and just behind Lockwood and Bowden. One truck to the outside, Blake McCandless there. You see him ready for North Sports Racing, making some contact there with Guerrilli as they enter 3 and 4.
McCandless trying to run that outside line as well. We've seen a couple of takers here early on in this race try and run up by that wall, and you can see him getting pinched up there as they go into turn number 1. McCandless was one of the drivers to go up to the wall early when we were racing at Homestead Miami Speedway a couple of weeks ago, and he said that was almost a little bit of a bad move because he was hitting the wall. He was chewing up those tires. He might go 3 wide as Kenny Brady runs the middle line. Bowden to the bottom line. Lockwood's down there as well in the 24. McCandless trying to make that outside line work, and it looks like as of right now it is. He's going by a handful of cars. He's trying to fight for the 11th spot with Brady.
He drifted up the track a little bit in the middle of 1 and 2, but got good momentum heading down the back straightaway. I think more importantly, Jeff McConey, let's come to you first on this. Does where you race on the racetrack matter that much to you this early in the going in terms of tire saving? Does it concern you if you're a crew chief for Blake McCandless and he's running the top line? Are you burning your tires more, or are we early on in this race that it doesn't matter? Or maybe it does matter, depending on how you look at it.
If it's me up on the box, I'm the type of crew chief that wants the driver comfortable. If they're saying they want to run the outside, let them run the outside. These guys are up in this top level series, racing for a chance in the Coca-Cola iRacing series because they are the best. These are some of the top sim racing drivers. If they say that they want to run the top, I'd say let them run the top. It's all about experimenting, and you can analyze the tire data after their first pit stop. You can see how it feels on the long run. You've built this setup primarily to how they drive. So if they've been running the wall for a lot of the practice sessions, then you can keep them up there. It all depends on what happened pre-race. So I guess to answer your question, if the driver's comfortable up there, let him stay up there. Blake McCandless is clearly making it move. He's had some trouble in these past few laps getting a run going. He'll get it going. It gets up to the outside and then it sort of stalls out. But if he enters high, he tends to carry a lot of that momentum up there. So it looks like he's having a really good run right now, though. I'm interested to see what he does. And he looks to the bottom of 3, thinks better of it, but maybe he could make that move a little bit later on.
Meanwhile, as McCandless continues to work his way towards the front, Justin Prince trouble for some of the drivers in the back of this field early on.
Yes, and one of the drivers at the back of the pack for the time being is Max Brady, just coming in from his camp that they are dealing with lap 1 contact, significant nose damage, where they are dealing with temperature issues, trying to keep those temperatures down. They're currently clutching into the corners to deal with it. Not the way Max Brady and his camp wanted to start again. It was contact coming out of turn 2 on the first lap down the back straightaway that has crushed their front nose.
You can see the front end damage and you immediately understand why he may have to clutch in the corner and get off the gas a little bit earlier than he'd like, just to maintain the oil and the water temps on that engine. Benefits it is not a lot of air getting into the radiator on Brady's machine. We'll see whether or not he can try and patch that up a little bit, but it's going to be a very, very long uphill battle for Brady as this race continues. Working our
What
way back
happens
to the
to
front
Max
of the
Brady?
field.
Sorry to cut you off there, James, for a moment, but what happened to Max Brady was on the first lap, just getting off of turn number 2, Patrick Moose got a little bit too loose coming out of that corner and backed right up into that nose of the 57 of Max Brady. So Brady's going to be fighting those temps all day long now.
And here's the thing on that is we all just it's booth tradition now to just talk over James at this point. The real issue with a track like this especially is these guys are running the tape as high as they can. There were some teams that were even putting on more tape than they could when they were running wide open and were clutching it into the corners. Now you put the clutch in, it lowers the RPM down to the idle, and it can really help keep the temperatures lower. So you add more tape, but you have to clutch it on entry. Now, Max is sort of forced into that strategy here, but these drivers are already running a lot of tape on these trucks with these setups and everything. So to have front end damage, it is especially bad here, as we actually just lost Frank DeAngelis, who was disconnected.
Was about to make that point because I saw that pop up as well, that DeAngelis becomes the first driver to drop out of this session. Not quite sure what happened to DeAngelis' machine. We'll see whether or not Justin Prince can track that down and get an answer for us momentarily. But in the meantime, we look at the very front of this field where Derek Bordeaux is in control of it ahead of Retzlaff, Keister, Tucker, and Alt. And everybody up front here, Josh Lee, I think beginning to bide their time and just start clicking off laps to make sure that they've got tires, that they've got fuel, that they've got something left at the end of this race.
Definitely looks that way, James. And with Bordeaux running up front, he started on the pole, obviously, took that early lead. Retzlaff kind of fell into second place, and now they're all single file up here. Keister's the biggest mover out of these front guys. He moved up about 3 spots from early on. Casey Tucker, Dylan Alt, Drew Farinage all dropping 1, so a good start for Frostburg, Maryland's number 33 of Colin Keister. And Space Station Gaming also showing their speed here is teammate Colin Bowden, not too far behind down in 9th place. But these drivers up at the front really starting to, like you mentioned, James, click off those laps, make sure they can make it through this first run, because I think a lot of these drivers might have been expecting a caution early on by the way the testing has gone, by the way past races here at the Rock have gone, and without an early caution, we're on lap 18, still caution free. Hoping I don't jinx it now, but we're still under the green flag.
If you want to know how even the top 10 are as we go on board with Briar LaPrade, everybody in the top 10 running within 1/10 of a second of one another. And about 8 of those top 10 were on the same 10th. Everybody running 24/7. So it is mere hundreds between most of this group, save for maybe Dylan Alt, who's been peeking around the rear deck lid of Casey Tucker's machine, trying to find a way past the 28 truck. But for the moment, to no avail. But right now up near the front, I'd say that's probably the best battle that we have in the top 10 between Tucker and Alt and Drew Freenage, who sits right behind Alt going into 1.
And we're on board with Farinage now running there in the 6th spot. We haven't talked too much about Drew Farinage. He's had a couple of good finishes through round number 1. Same thing in round number 2, but he currently sits in 20th, only 1 point above that 20th place cut line. He is 1 point above both Adam Gilliland and Casey Tucker, which Casey Tucker currently running in 4th. So he needs to try and put a bullseye on Casey Tucker, who we're on board with now. Put a target on the Douglasville, Georgia driver and get around him, because as of right now, where they run, Casey Tucker is going to get above Drew Farinage in the points, knock him out of the Contender Series with a couple of rounds to go.
Remember that Drew Farinage was right on the edge of making it out of round 1. He had to race his way in on that last night at Dover International Speedway, and you get the sense just off the way he's going that it may end up being a similar story at the end of round 2 when we get to Phoenix. It may be tough sledding for Farinage to lock himself into the Contender Series. And remember, we have 2 races going on. This race and then another one that are taking place simultaneously, and they both count for the same series. It's 70 drivers going for 20 spots. The top 20 in points across these series of races, these 8 that you see in the back half of the season, advance to the eNASCAR Road to Pro Contender Series that will happen later this fall. They'll race against the drivers who finish 21st or lower in the point standings, the 2021 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. And those 40 will get together. They'll run the Contender Series, and the top 20 from that will make up the second 20 that go into next year's Coke Series, along with the top 20 in points from this season. So a little bit complicated there, verbally, for sure. That's why we do have graphics every once in a while to help point it out. But that's what you're racing for at the end of this. This is all to try and give yourself a chance to make the Coke Series. That is the goal for everyone that is running this evening and every race of this eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series. Keeping an eye here a little bit further back, this is one of the fan favorites, Spencer E. Burns, who is there and hanging out just near the back and near Brian Lockwood, too, who won a Watkins Glen 2 weeks ago.
Can't get any closer when they're hanging out. Those two have been side by side for a couple laps now. Good battle going on, and really right around that 17th, 18th position is where everything is. And you can hear some drivers are putting in the clutch. That gets the RPMs low, helps keep the temperature down, but a little bit tight on exit there for Brian Lockwood as he gets up close to the wall. That opens the door for Nicholas Morse now to look low, and Spencer E. Burns, the media man himself, is clear. Jeremy B. Davis is just snipping right behind there. Look at how bumpy this track is, up and down and up and down. This spring package is specially designed for a track like this. It is incredibly bumpy. You can actually get away with using a Bristol setup here with a gear change. There's been success in the past with that, but this track is very, very difficult to get around. And now looking to throw his hat in the fight, though, as well, is Michael Finlayson. He started 28th. He's up to 23rd now. He's sitting behind that little cluster that we've been watching, but he is looking to work his way forward. He hasn't been qualifying well in this second round, but he has been finishing well. Up there, he is teammates with Briar LaPrade, who is also working his way up. Started 19th and all the way up to 13th for LaPrade. So there's some people towards the back that are really making their way forward, but if you're making your way, if there's drivers moving forward, there's just as many moving backwards. Brian Lockwood down 10 spots already here, looking for a little bit more.
Speaking of drivers moving forward, one that Josh Lee pointed out earlier, one of the hardest chargers in this race so far. How about Blake McCandless making his moves in the Mr. 4-Speed Chevy Silverado? Started in 17th, currently in that 8th position, so that high side might just be working for him, Josh.
It certainly does look like that. I mean, up 9 spots from where he started back in 17th, currently running up here in the 8th spot and looking for another one on Colin Bowden. I was just going off of what he said after Homestead, because it seemed like a bit of a weird strategy, and he didn't really like it when we left Homestead of running the wall throughout the race and burning those tires up. But it looks like here at Rockingham, bottom lane, top lane, doesn't matter. Tires are wearing just about the same, and you can see McCandless going down to the bottom. Colin Bowden running that outside line now. Bowden going to cut down to close the door on McCandless. So the 26, Mr. 4-Speed machine, going to have to rebound now from 8th. He goes back to the bottom as we move up to a battle for the 3rd spot. Keister now up on the outside line. Here comes Dylan Altz from 4th, trying to fight for a top 3.
Does that not look like a carbon copy of what we just saw between Bowden and McCandless, where you've got Bowden up top, McCandless down on the bottom? Here, it's Keister who's running that high line as Alt runs the bottom, and you see just what kind of run Keister's able to get by keeping the motor wound up. Jeff, I'll come to you on this because I think it's a point you'll know a little bit about. These trucks race so much like the current Cup cars in terms of how much you rely off of momentum to get good lap times. Is that much of a surprise that the outside seems to be so powerful for the handful of drivers who have clearly shown they know how to use it?
If you can drive the outside and you can build your setup to it, you can absolutely make it work on the long run especially. You mentioned momentum. That is everything in these trucks. You need to carry it all the way around, and one little bobble can really throw you off. Another thing about momentum is it carries over from week to week as well. Dylan Alt now up to 4th place. He was battling with Colin Keister. He's looking to still make that move. Keister's able to carry more speed on exit because he's running higher on the track. But Dylan Alt carrying momentum off of his win last week, and as well as his teammate a little bit further back. But everyone from week to week to week, it carries over. If you have a bad race, you got to work really hard to make sure you don't have 2 in a row. If you have a good race, it seems like it just stacks on a little bit easier every time.
That's exactly what McCandless is fighting. He's the one that I think of in particular who's had speed and just not had luck. But it would make sense that he has pace at Rockingham, given that it is his home track. Maybe if you take out Southern National, I guess that might be the only other track on the surface that is closer to his home base of Raleigh, North Carolina. But we are very much in the backyard of Mr. F4 Speed, and we keep an eye on how McCandless does over the course of the evening. Good battles, though, all the way across the track. And another driver we've not talked about much yet, but making a charge through the field and not too far behind plate, Daniel Eberhardt, champion of the Podium 500 from 2020, started in 16th, currently up to the 10th position, and trying to find a way up to the rear direct lid of Dylan Jones to challenge for 9th.
And we have not talked about Eberhardt that much, and he's not that far behind the cut line. 5 points. He currently sits in 24th, trying to get up on top of that top 20, and he's having one of his best runs of the season right now, running here in 10th, and positive yardage as well, up 6 spots from where he started in 16th. And we have a caution on the racetrack. First one of the night, Nicholas Morse around back straightaway.
Nick Morse in trouble and with heavy damage to the front of his Chevrolet Silverado. We'll take a look at the replay momentarily and see what happened. But Morse is your first yellow, and Jeff McConey, I figure everybody's probably coming down from 4 tires and fuel.
Yes, you most certainly are. You've gone 40 laps just about, working their way up to the front. But taking a look back at that wreck, that is some infighting in the team. Obviously nothing intentional, just coming off the corner. Spencer Burns needs to carry as much momentum as he can off of the bottom, and Nicholas Morse is just a hair off the wall. Teammates there getting into each other. Nicholas Morse is a little bit further off the wall than Spencer's expecting. They come together. The tiniest touch sends Nicholas Morse around, so that is certainly not good as he takes that truck right to the garage as everybody takes it to pit road.
We'll head down to Justin Prince for more info on our drivers coming in for service for the first time tonight.
For Derek Bordeaux in his camp just before the caution flag, they said they were having him doing his best to keep the tires on his truck. His truck, they said, is a little bit tight, but Clean Air has been helping them in that situation. Their goal was to try and keep track position with the caution flag. When it came to Briar LaPrat's camp, they had mentioned that they were feeling pretty comfortable and were still discussing their strategy prior to that caution flag as well. So this does mix up some of the strategies for some of these competitors. One of the drivers who was not happy about the caution flag, Blake McCandless, despite getting those positions, wanted that run to go forward.
An opportunity to use your knowledge, use your tires. But yeah, a big moment for Nick Morse, especially since you consider that he and Spencer Burns are both teammates at Amuka High Performance Motorsports. So not exactly going to be the most fun of team meetings tomorrow morning, but I think that incident to me strikes me as one that comes about because you have different lanes that you can run in the corner, Jeff O'Connor, especially in turns 1 and 2, but it seems like everybody has to funnel to the same spot on the exit of the corner because that entry onto the back straightaway is so narrow and so choppy. There's a big transition in banking there, and you're all fighting for the same real estate, and sometimes you end up with mistakes like the one that Spencer made.
Yeah, when you're driving around here at 150 miles an hour, you don't have much room for error. And that last incident was just Nick was a little bit further off the wall than Spencer anticipated, and Spencer is trying to get everything he can because he's run the bottom to carry as much momentum off of the corner. It's just two people looking at the same spot and both taking it. And these things just happen, but now this is a great opportunity for the crew chiefs to look at the tire data, see how the tires were. Were they wearing more than you anticipated, less, right on target? It all depends, and these drivers are going to be really happy with some adjustments, I think. There can be a lot of things that you can do to these trucks, air pressure, spring perch offsets, all these different adjustments that you can make to really help the truck on the short and or long run.
Lights are off on the pace cars. We remind you all that there is one more qualifier and one more opportunity left to register for the Podium Esports Retro 500, the tribute to the Winston Cup era of stock car racing, utilizing iRacing's 1987 Chevrolet Monte Carlo and Ford Thunderbird at Darlington Raceway in the heat of the sun on Labor Day weekend. One more qualifier race coming your way next Wednesday, August 25th at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. Top 10 drivers who are not already entered and qualified into the Retro 500 will lock down their spots to finish off the 41-car grid that will go for Labor Day on the hottest, slickest Darlington you can imagine. 367 laps, 500 miles, and $500 going to the winner. Head to podiumesports.com/retro 500 or use the chat command !retro 500 for more information.
And Josh, speaking of the qualifier races, are you going to be running the next one? Because you didn't advance last night.
Very much still up in the air, Jeff. If you remember to put the tire blankets on my car, I definitely will be.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure it's everyone else's fault that Joshua Lee couldn't race his way in, but Dylan Connolly could. Anyways, we are back to Green Flag Racing. Some dodge, duck, dip, diving, and dodging all throughout the field as you are trying to get as far up as you can and gain as much position here right on this start. This is your best opportunity when everyone is clustered together. Taking full advantage of that, Briar LaPrade rolling the outside. He's made up three spots already in just a lap.
Really nice work there from LaPrade to make that outside work in his favor, and he's going to carry the momentum a little bit more to get around Daniel Everhart, try and work to the outside of Dylan Jones. But we saw it with Blake McCandless. We saw, I think that might have been Jones get a little bit loose on the inside in 3 and 4. So clear space there for LaPrade to make moves, and he is going to bring Kyle Peddle in that bright yellow machine with him.
Trying to run that bottom line. LaPrade looking for more spots. We talked about him before the break, up 10 spots from where he originally started. Look up the road. Blake McCandless back to the outside line as he is looking to gain more spots. He's already gained one on Drew Farinars. Looks for another on Dylan Alt. Goes to the outside for 4th. They dive back into turn number 1. Top 3 pulled away, but here comes Blake McCandless running about a car length away from the wall. He gets by Dylan Alt. He's in 4th now, setting his eyes on Space Station Gaming's Colin Keister for 3rd.
And the most intriguing thing, I think, about this line, Jeff McConey, is that compared to everybody else that's down on the bottom, you don't really have too many drivers running up on the high side. So you've got room to carry as much momentum as you can. You don't really have to worry about being stopped by anybody. So if you know how to run that high line, you're going to be able to just click off your laps, gain your time, and maybe avoid a yellow flag like the one that we have now. Second one of the evening. Trouble a little bit further back. Dylan Jones is one of the trucks involved in this. Looked like there may have been a few more that got into it with him. We'll take a look at the replay and see who else was involved with Jones's machine.
It looks like Dylan C. Jones just got stuck in the middle, and I don't want to call anybody out, but Spencer Burns also involved in this one. You can see that 06 down on the bottom. He gets up into Dylan C. Jones. Finlayson with damage. It looked like a handful of other trucks might have been getting some small damage there as well. The 33 got a nail. It looked like one truck may have just barely missed it down on the bottom, but here's that onboard from Finlayson. Nowhere he could have possibly gone. Right in the middle of the fire, able to get out of it. The 16 with damage. That's Mitchell Hunt that was involved in that one. So 4 or 5 trucks with damage after this one. Nobody with too much of bad damage. It just looked like Dylan C. Jones definitely getting the worst of that one as he was in the middle 3 wide. Nowhere to go.
Spencer Burns makes contact with Dylan Jones, and Jones goes around. Brian Blackford was one of the drivers that you mentioned. He got some damage. Finlayson got some to the right front corner of his truck. Looks like those two were the worst casualties of that incident, along with Mitchell Hunt, who also has some right front damage, but everybody else in good shape as a few trucks come down pit road. Justin Prince.
And these drivers, a majority of them getting damage repairs done as a result of that incident, but some drivers getting some tire repairs done in that circumstance. Dylan Jones does overrun his pit box. The rest of the competitors off and away, and this would mix up some of the calls. Keep in mind, it's tight for one stops, possibly, and Jeff, you may be able to touch upon this more, on the fuel. So this may be a thought process of trying to top off and try and stretch this run as far as they can.
You can definitely make that strategy work, but I think the limiting factor tonight is going to be the tires. You need tires more than you need fuel, but a lot of drivers are going to be gambling here. I think some might have taken tires there, in which case we're going to see them, even after only 2 or 3 laps there, you're going to see them moving up and having some really good runs and being able to make passes here. Now, it'll even out after probably about 10, 15 laps or so, but until they even out, they could have an advantage, but it wasn't until about the 14th, 15th position or so that people started coming down pit road. Everyone in front just stayed out.
2 early yellow flags. A restart coming momentarily. We'll be back after these short messages from our partners. You're watching coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from the virtual Rockingham Speedway on Podium Esports.
Darlington Raceway. It's known as the Lady in Black. The track too tough to tame.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series in the virtual Rockingham Speedway. Pace car set to come off of the racetrack, and we'll go back green flag racing on lap 51 of 200, quarter of the way home in tonight's 200-lap race, as it was almost a really good restart for Colin Keister, and then he had to check up to make sure he didn't beat Derek line as Brian LaPrade is stuck in the middle and they're 3 wide just a bit further back. Josh Lee.
4 wide, Kyle Peddle up on the top of the racetrack. That's the number 14 machine. They keep it straight somehow. Drew Farinarch gets through that. Casey Tucker gets through that. Kyle Peddle was scraping the wall, almost top of 4 wide, and he's able to keep it on the racetrack. He's going to be staying in 11th spot, going to look for 10th on Casey Tucker as he gives the shot to the 28 as they dive back into 1.
Tough racing there a little bit further back. Contact there, Peddle in the fence, down into the inside wall hard. He'll bounce up across the racetrack. One truck will flip over, the yellow flag out for the 3rd time, and what was unquestionably the biggest wreck of the evening, as Justin Bolton was the truck that went over on his lid. Jeff McConey and everybody went everywhere once Peddle made contact with the wall in 2.
Yeah, that is not at all what you want to see. Kyle Peddle, he's in a bit of trouble there. He's just riding around up on the outside, and then all of a sudden into the wall, and Justin Bolton ended up going over, I believe it was, and that's a lot of damage to Peddle there. Now you're getting into the mindsets of the drivers, though, of what are we going to be, are we going to be wrecking a bunch now? What's our strategy from this point on? They ran 40 laps green just about, and now it's just caution after caution after caution. Cautions do breed cautions, but this is a long race tonight, 200 laps.
The attrition rate beginning to climb in this event. It was contact with Brad Wright that Petal made, and he bounces off of Wright's right side into the fence, and what a big move there. It could have been much worse for Garrett Conrath than it ended up being. He was able to lock it down. Little bit of damage to that truck on the right front and one side of that rear deck lid, but it could have been very, very big for him. It was very big for Justin Bolton, who has a significant amount of engine damage to go with the sheet metal damage. Could well be night over for him, and is, as he's going to try and get that thing cleaned up as best he can, but that's going to be tough to repair. Justin Prince, any words from pit road over the course of these last few green flag runs?
Well, one of the biggest movers we've seen with this caution flag triggering things as well, an additional spot for Blake McCandless, is he has been shocked. McCandless has been. We have to emphasize that no one else has really used the top line so far throughout these runs. He has said, I know we should save tires, but who cares? Get the track position, get the clean air, quote unquote. And he is absolutely surprised that no one has followed that line along with him to make these moves the way he has. LaPrade did try and do that before the last couple restarts, but McCandless has showcased that top line is moving on these restarts. He is still trying to sort out if tire wear is going to be critical later on in this run.
And or whether or not it's worth it to try and take rubber. Just a note for those who are keeping score at home, the first 12 drivers came in 16 laps ago under that first yellow. Everybody else either came in under our second yellow 7 laps ago or this yellow flag now. So you've got some differing pit strategies here, Jeff McConaughey. Do you think that's going to play into the way we race when we go back green flag racing in just a bit?
Well, it's certainly going to make things interesting because even 1 or 2 laps can make a difference on these tires. So to be, 5, 6 green flag laps on them and have that much of a difference, those drivers are going to be quicker that are on fresh tires, and they're going to be able to work their way up through the field. Now, when they are working their way up through the field and are quicker, you have trucks that are at different speeds racing around each other, which can lead to more cautions, which we've already seen a plethora of so far. So we'll see how it ends up working out. The more different the strategies are among the drivers, the more drivers that are on fresh tires versus older ones can really, really make a difference. The more likely it is for things to go south.
Remind you that tonight's broadcast of this eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series event is brought to you by McConaughey Setup Shop, your home for everything iRacing, the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports. From Legends to Cup cars, they have you covered. With dirt setups available for late models, modifieds, and wing sprints, and road setups available for F3, LMP2, and GT4 cars. McConaughey Setup Shop has opened up a paint shop at McConaugheySetupShop.com/paint to help you look good while going fast. The paint schemes are available for any car, so get yours starting at just $20 today. Coaching is also available with professional drivers such as Zach Novak, Jimmy Mullis, River Hayes, and more for $25 an hour. And for more information, you can visit their website at McConaugheySetupShop.com. Pace truck is off. Bordeaux in control. Green flag out once again. Looks like Dylan Alt spun the tires a little bit further back, and that could stack things up right around Brian LaPrade. Josh Lee.
LaPrade going to go to the outside of Dylan Alt. Casey Tucker goes all the way to the wall. Still side by side further back. Finlayson trying to rebound off of that second caution. He was involved in that wreck. He's trying to get back up to the front. He's currently running in 12th outside of Brad right down on the bottom. 3 wide for a moment. Farinars goes up the middle. He's trying to get spots, get further up into the top 10. Casey Tucker to his outside. Dylan Alt's in front of him. Brad right now going to follow in his footsteps as they all race onto the back straight.
How much do you love being somebody like a Daniel Eberhardt or a Dylan Alt right now, and that you are not part of this 2x2 fracas in the middle of the top 10 as Alt washes up the racetrack and opens up the door underneath for Friedrich to try and get the position?
And they all still fighting back there. You can see Farinar getting right down to the bottom of the racetrack, trying to protect that spot from Brad Wright on board with Casey Tucker. He's one of the drivers trying to experiment on the outside, but he cuts to the bottom in 3. Gonna look for that pass on Brad Wright. He has Kenny Brady in tow. Off turn 4, not gonna be able to get enough of a run. In keeping that spot is gonna be Brad Wright. Tucker gonna stay in 11th place. Now up to the outside goes Farinars, a little bit too far to the outside. Here comes right to the bottom for 9th.
Right to the inside, Freenos to the outside. They both trail that line of trucks in front of them and still race hard for position. Freenos working the outside as he tries to keep Ryan at bay. Everhart trying to scoot away from Dylan Alt, but not much movement around these trucks and not much movement in the top 10 unless you go up a little bit further and you go see what Brian LaPrade, Blake McCandless, and Colin Bowman are up to.
Those drivers up there are really battling it out. Brian LaPrade started in 19th. He's up to 6th. Blake McCandless in 17th up to 5th. Daniel Everhart 16th, now up to 7th. How about Brad Wright? Started in 32nd in the number 32 truck. He's all the way up to 10th. Lots of drivers are making moves. Michael Finlayson, even with that damage, is currently running 14th. Santiago Tiras from 29th to 16th. Eddie Kerner from 30th to 17th. A lot of names that we don't get to talk about too much are working their way up through the field. This chaos can hurt a lot of drivers, but for some drivers, it can really, really help them out.
And Jeff, in comparison to some of the other tracks we've run this year in the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series, this isn't particularly an aero-sensitive track. It is to a point, but it's not like, say a Las Vegas or an Atlanta or Texas that we go to next time out, where if you've got some sort of sheet metal damage, it probably is going to hinder your ability to be quick.
You are correct. You can get away with some rear end damage here. For this race, the front end damage can really hurt. We've seen it with the temperatures going up. You're already running a lot of tape on these things to get as much speed as possible and carry a lot of momentum because these are high speed corners. You're going through the corners. You enter at about 160 or so, and you're going still through them at about 135 miles an hour. 25 mile an hour drop through the corners really is not that bad when compared to some of the other tracks we go to. So these drivers need a lot of front end downforce and everything up at the front to be needs to be perfect. So you take damage in the front, that can really hurt you. But you take damage at the rear end, the side, something like that, you can be all right here as Brian LaPrade is now looking to line up some sort of pass on Blake McCandless. He's about a truck length off of him.
Been interesting to watch here, and Justin Prince, I don't know if you've heard anything from pit road, but I've been keeping an eye on Bowden, McCandless, and LaPrade. And Bowden, for a long while, was running that very top line that Blake McCandless had been running earlier on in this race and effectively taking that line away. So McCandless responded by running the middle of the racetrack, and LaPrade, in turn, responded by taking the bottom side. So you have 3 different lanes between these 3 drivers. Justin Prince, do you know anything more about that?
Well, it's gone silent when it comes to some of the radios in regards to McCandless and LaPrade in particular, but can emphasize one thing. For LaPrade, he was told to think big picture for this race. And keep in mind, some of the drivers in front of them, like Colin Keister, have reported after a few laps that dirty air has been hampering their trucks. So it is to where you may see those different lines come into play for trying to get the clean air. But as we've seen throughout this race, majority prefer the bottom to make sure they don't overcook their tires here at Rockingham Speedway.
We're noting also that LaPrade has got the victory as he's going to peek underneath Blake McCandless and try and take away the last spot in the top 5 as McCandless will wash up the racetrack. But how much of a mental win is that for you, and how big is it mentally to have a win already in this round in your pocket, Jeff McConey? It's not necessarily a guarantee that you're going to find yourself in the top 20 at the end of this series when we get to Phoenix next month, but a win does go a long way in this round, especially when you only have 8 races that you're working with as a sample size.
Yeah, I would be very, very happy if I were in there and I had a win. I mean, I'm happy to win like a bottom split race with how some of my events go. But up here at this top level, you take home that win and you are putting yourself in a really good position. Granted, you have those 8 races that you mentioned. You have to be consistent across the board. You can't have one win and then a bunch of 30th, 31st. You have to win, finish top 15 every week. Finish top 10 if you can every week. Run in the top 5 as much as you can. Be able to play those strategies, be willing to make those big moves, and be able to think on the long run. Make sure that you can look ahead. You're not stuck in the right now. You're thinking about next lap, 10 laps down the road, 30, 50, next race. All those things have to be something that you're conscious of, because one win, it's really nice to have. I'd rather have one than not, but it does not lock you in by any stretch of the imagination.
There is still work to be done for LaPrade, for Brian Lockwood and Donovan Strauss and company, everybody who's been quick in the early part of the second round of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. As we get a look off the rear deck, then a little bit further back in the field, taking a good look the space station racing machines as they come across the front stretch and down into turn one, as does the driver out of Warner Robins, Georgia, Daniel Eberhardt, who is just there behind Brian LaPrade, running in the 7th position.
Working his way off of turn number 2, and you can see LaPrade going for a move on Blake McCandless. These 3 drivers running relatively close. Add Dylan Alt into that mix as well as they continue to battle for 5th. LaPrade takes a peek to the bottom on McCandless. Is he going to go for it? He does. Here comes LaPrade to the bottom in 1. McCandless looking stout on that outside line. LaPrade going to get pinched a little bit by McCandless. Loose coming off at turn 2. LaPrade loses a ton of time. Eberhardt looks to the bottom, and he says, I'm not even going to touch that. LaPrade stays on the outside line. Old stays up there as well. Eberhardt working the bottom.
And the reason why LaPrade is side by side with Eberhard Jeff McConey is because LaPrade caught the apron with the left front tire ever so slightly on corner exit. It was just enough to upset the rear end of his truck, and you see what happened. He had to spend a whole lap racing off and holding Daniel Eberhard at bay from the outside.
But tell you what, he got one strong run on the outside, and he was able to hold off that truck. Now Dylan Alter's going to look on the inside. Brian LaPrade gets another good run through the middle here, and he'll be able to stay clear on exit. However, Dylan Alt, if he's able to run well on the bottom, he might be able to hang on and even take that spot. The outside is strong, but it's not perfect. We've seen Brian LaPrade go 2 for 2 with trucks on his inside, being able to hold them off, but certainly far from a guarantee. If you get a good run going on the inside, you can make that work.
As Eberhardt looked to the outside, then to the inside, LaPrade is just leading this group of McCandless by virtue of that little bobble that LaPrade has stretched out the gap here to almost half a second on LaPrade and company. So a big break there for Blake, who gets to resume his charge to try and run down Colin Bowden, but everybody still chasing Derek Bordeaux, who has controlled this race from the drop of the green flag as we now work lap 78 of 200, approaching the halfway point in this race. And you look at the tire wear here. If you were really bold, Jeff McConey, and thought that we were going to go green the entire way, especially given that that first yellow happened about lap 40, you could split up these tires into 40 lap segments, and if you did, you'd be coming down right about now. But given the way these yellows have played out, given the way that tire wear tends to go here, and how late race restarts tend to go, when do you think we may see our leaders in next for service?
Well, we've really been going green flag racing for a little while now, but it hasn't been too long. Taking a look back, looks like we really went green flag racing once again back at lap 57. We've been green since then. So lap 57, you can call it negligible on the past few green flag laps because it was broken up by cautions after only about a lap or 2. So 57, that's 143 laps. You're going to make 2 more stops. So about 71 laps. So that would be lap 1. That's not right. You got to break it into 3 segments. So that's going to be 143. You break it into 3 segments. Give me a minute to do the math here, but yeah, it should be 50, 60 laps or so. So about maybe 110 or so, 111, you'll see him coming in. As we are just working the math here quickly behind the scenes, but I've been watching this racing up here towards the front. All of a sudden, you're seeing trucks that were quick before at the beginning of the run start to fall off here. So those adjustments that were made may have gone the wrong way on a couple of these trucks.
Just looking here, if we played the reverse game that we played for some of our hard chargers, some of the folks who have fallen a bit, Dylan Alt's down 3 spots, Drew Freenage down 4 spots, Casey Tucker down 9 spots from where he started, but the drivers who are really suffering. How about Brian Lockwood, who won at Watkins Glen 2 weeks ago? He's 22nd now after starting at 9th. Dylan Jones is 21st after starting 8th. Garrett Conrath was part of that incident that sent Kyle Peddle flying on the back straightaway. He's 18th after starting in 7th, albeit with a little bit of front end damage to his truck. But there are some drivers in this race, Josh Lee, who have not fared so well in the first half of tonight's event.
Agnel Phillip, another one of those as well, down 12 spots. Michael Guerrilla, who was involved in the same incident you just talked about, James, the one that sent Justin Bolton flipping down the back straightaway. Michael Guerrilla is 15 down in 28th. Justin Bolton, who was the truck that went flipping, is back on the racetrack, albeit 28 laps down, but he's still trying to nurse his way home. Maybe if more trucks get taken out, try and gain a spot or two to gain just a little bit more points. And that's important for Justin Bolton, really specifically. He has been having the best round number 2 to begin the second half of the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing season. Just needs every point that he possibly can. 13 down from the cut line. One position, maybe 2, maybe 3 will definitely help him a lot, but even just one position is going to give him just a little bit more points to make a bad day turn into at least a productive day.
One position potentially making the difference. 2 or 3 really offering some help if he could get them, as they have settled out for the most part here. But yet again, Colin Bowden, Blake McCandless trying to figure out who wants to go higher up the racetrack. But they're the only ones really in this top 10 at the moment who are trying something different. Maybe you could check in. Looks like one of the trucks a little bit further back. That might have been Brad Wright that I saw popping up high. But for the most part, everybody's sort of down on the inside line, save for Keister and McCandless. And I believe it's the lap truck, or actually, no, it's Daniel Everhart that I met, not Brad Wright. Brad Wright's a little bit further back. But a handful of drivers running the top. Most folks, though, sticking down to the bottom like most people do here at Rock.
Handful of cars down on the bottom, but we're still seeing those drivers experiment with that top line, and we're hearing a lot about tire wear as we go further into this run. That could also be contributing to the drivers running the bottom line. On board with Drew Farina as the exit turns 2. I want to look forward at those Space Station Gaming trucks. Take a look at both of them. Colin Keister, Colin Bowden, 2 teammates. I don't think it's a coincidence, James, that they're both running the outside line as this run develops. We saw it in the first run as well. I commented on it in the broadcast chat. They're both running that outside line on worn tires throughout a tire run. I think that they have the same setup on their trucks, both practiced in the same hosted session, both have the same setups on their trucks, so they're both running that outside line towards the end of the run. Maybe they found it was faster, maybe the setup is designed to run up there when the tires are worn.
SSG running in positions 2 and 4 as Bowden tries to work over Retzlaff for position number 3, just behind Keister, and Bordeaux clear by 1 second over this field, closing in on halfway, and then should be maybe about 10 laps after halfway that we start seeing drivers come down pit road, as Jeff McConey said just a little while ago. A little bit further back in the field, take a look at what Brian LaPrad's up to. He's with Drew Freenage. They're door to door, going through 1 and 2. It's a good battle, and then maybe slide a little bit further back, and you get this mess from about 13 on, where you've got Kenny Brady, Santiago Gutierrez, Michael Finlayson, Patrick Moose, Garrett Conrath, all running in a line from 12th to 17th.
They all fight coming off of turn number 4. Side by side, Santiago Gutierrez to the bottom. Brady up on that outside line. Brady looking at a bit of an up and down day. He only started up in 12th, so he's only lost net 1 position from the start of this race. Marietta George's Kenny Brady up on that outside line. Gets by Santiago Gutierrez, who's running on the bottom. They'll go single file for the moment as Michael Finlayson going to look for 14th on Santiago Gutierrez. Santi Gutierrez up 16 spots now as he goes by Brady. Brady coming off of turn number 4 went right down into the apron, got very loose off the corner. He lets that entire group go by. They're still side by side off 2 as to the outside of Michael Finlayson goes Garrett Conrath.
The saying is loose is fast. Kenny Brady is most definitely a believer in it, because I saw the rear end of that truck step out really badly out of 4, but it wasn't the first time over the last few laps that I had seen that truck fishtail just a bit. He's got that truck set up to where he doesn't have to turn it all that much for the rear end to step out from underneath him. You can't carry speed like that, Jeff McConey, but that's a very slippery slope to ride, especially as the tires begin to wear on a long green flag run.
Absolutely. With these trucks and with any car, The right rear is what controls primarily how the truck handles on exit. The higher the tire pressure inside, the looser it's going to be on exit. Now, when you heat up a tire, the air pressure inside increases. That's why if you start it a little bit low and you heat the tires up, the air pressure increases. That's just the way physics works. The hotter it is, the more, the higher the air pressure. So when you slide that right rear tire, it increases the temperature of it. When you increase the temperature, the tire pressure increases and it gets looser on exit. Gets looser on exit, it slides the tire more, which increases the tire pressure, makes it even looser, so on and so forth. So you slide it once, it's really easy to do it again and again and again and again. So one tiny mistake on exit, sliding that right rear tire, can make it worse for a while, as right now there's almost a wreck. Kenny Brady drives up into Patrick Moose, who's having a really, really hard time saving that thing, but manages somehow, some way to keep it pointed straight and avoids a caution.
I was watching the same incident. We nearly had another yellow flag with Kenny Brady and Patrick Moose. We'll get a good shot of what happened coming out of turn 4 this time by. And they were already racing pretty hard, Josh Lee, before we got to turn 3. And then it spilled over a bit over in 4.
And you can see it right there. Either Brady got loose or got tight coming into turn number 3, chased that truck up the road and made contact with Patrick Moose. That sends Moose a little bit slower than Brady. Brady able to continue a little bit better than the number 24 of Moose, but the 24 going to now run in 18th. Kenny Brady only one spot up, and Brady's going to just let him go by. Patrick Moose going to hop up into 17th. Brady down to 18th. The other Brady, Max Brady, side by side with Connor Horn coming off of turn number 4. Max Brady's going to take that spot. Connor Horn, who you're on board with now, almost making contact with the number 57 as they go back into 1, but keeping that spot. 19th place, it'll be Max Brady.
19th and 20th. Decent recovery run for Max Brady, given all the damage he got on lap 1 of this race. And it was a pretty heavy shot that he took to the nose, but he's done a nice job to repair that truck and get it cleaned up. And maybe, just maybe, there might be a halfway decent finish in it for him, as Derek Bordeaux will come around and complete lap number 100. We'll take a moment to bring you tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break, which is always brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the world of outlaws, and more. Derek Bordeaux is your leader by 0.8 of a second over Colin Keister. Parker Retzlaff runs in the 3rd position. 4th belongs to Cullen Bowden, and 5th is where you'll find Blake McCandless in tonight's eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series event. It's race number 4 of round number 2 at Rockingham Speedway. Dylan All is in the 6th position. 7th belongs to Daniel Eberhardt. 8th is where you'll find Drew Friedars. Casey Tucker holds the 9th spot, and the last spot in the top 10 as it stands belongs to Brad Wright.
You're on board with the 11th place driver right now, Jeremy Davis. Santiago Tirez sits in 12th. Garrett Conrath in 13th. Michael Finlayson in 14th. Dylan Jones, after his incident, fighting in 15th at the moment. Patrick Moose is in 16th. It's the Bradys. I don't think there's any relation between the two, but Kenny Brady's in 17th. Max Brady in 18th. Connor Horn 19th, with Seth Noel battling from 20th at the moment.
In 21st is Michael Frisch. 22nd goes to Spencer Burns. Eddie Kerner in 23rd. Brian Lockwood 24th. Agnell Phillip 25th. Michael Grilli at 26th. The first truck 1 lap down. Briar LaPrade now back to 27th, but Justin Prince will have some more information on that later. Brian Blackford in the pits, 11 laps down, 28th. Justin Bolton 28 laps down, 29th. And Kyle Peddle is the first one disconnected in 30th.
Peddle, Mitchell Hunt, Nick Morse, and Frank DeAngelis, the 4 trucks that are out of tonight's race. They are 30th through 33rd, respectively. And that concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and corners to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. And you can get on track today at iRacing.com. Now, we did mention that Briar LaPrade is back in 27th, but Justin Prince, that is in part because he just came down pit road while we were in the process of completing our midway race break.
And he has been struggling a bit tight throughout this run. His team elected to put on some tape and did some minor adjustments to try and help him make his way around this racetrack. Keep in mind, they believe that was because of all the heat cycles, as Jeff McConey can talk about a little bit, that came to play with all the restarts earlier on. It's going to be a tough box for him, though, as well, Jeff, because this puts him in the two-stopper on the gas.
It's going to be very close. He's hoping for a caution probably about 15 to 20 laps after everyone else pits. Depends on how it all cycles out. But Briar LaPrat is going to be much quicker than the leader by the tune of about 1.4 seconds. So that's what those new tires can do. You mentioned heat cycling there. Now what that means is you heat the tires up and then you cool them back down. Briar LaPrat on those restarts was making a bunch of passes. He was riding the outside. He was passing 3, 4, 5 trucks a lap, but he was doing everything he could to get as many positions as possible, as quick as possible. So what ends up happening there is he heats up the tires, and then he cools them back off when the caution comes out. Then he gets going again on the green flag, heats up the tires again, then cools them back down on the next caution. There was 3 times where we had cautions following immediately after one another. So he heat cycled those tires 3 times. That wears them out very, very quickly. The reason his were so bad was because he heat cycled it more than anybody else with how aggressive he was being on the restarts. There was a short-term gain. He was sort of hoping for a caution before he needed to make that pit stop. Now he needs to hold on for a little bit longer. One more caution, though, after about 20 laps or so after the leaders come in, and I think he'll be in really good shape and be back on strategy. If I'm in the LaPrat camp, I'm not too worried at all. This will come back and work in his favor if he's able to drive it well, and Briar LaPrat has been on a hot streak these past few weeks.
I think the intriguing question with this strategy is just how much he can gain from the fresh tires now, and or whether or not that plays into things depending on where and or if, although I'm inclined to say where, a yellow flag comes out. I think we're probably not done with the yellows at some point, and we may see one as more drivers come down pit road because there's such a difference in speed. Last time Briar LaPrat ran a 24.2. Your leader, Derek Bordeaux, was on a 25.8, so it's over a second a lap difference that you get with the fresh rubber. You have a lot of trucks come down pit road and you have differences of speed across the racetrack. It's very easy for people to misjudge closing rates and distances and get into one another right in the middle of a pit stop cycle, and you could end up with an incident there too. It's happened before. Won't necessarily guarantee that it will happen again tonight, but it wouldn't be the first time I've seen it in the sim at Rockingham or elsewhere. As Derek Bordeaux is beginning to work some of the lap traffic in this field, just managed to get around Agno Phillip, who's struggling on the inside, but he still your race leader, but fighting here not only with your leaders, but with some lap traffic on fresh rubber. Spencer Burns working to his outside. Burns just came down pit road and got in the fence and just about bounced off into Derek Bordeaux. That was a very scary moment for the race leader, Josh Lee.
That could have gone very south very quickly. He's still dealing with these lap machines. He slides into line, but take a look at who's right behind him. Colin Keister fighting from second spot. He's looking for the lead before they make those green flag pit stops. Here comes Keister with a huge run off of turn number 4. Side by side for the race lead as they dive back into 1. Keister's going to take it, slides up in front of Bordeaux. Bordeaux's going to cross over to the bottom.
That was a slide job if I've ever seen one, as Keister will work the outside, Bordeaux to the inside, and that tire saving that's been going on for the last 20 laps or so on that high lane for Keister appears to be paying off. A big run for his space station, giving Ford F-150 on the outside, and Colin Keister takes the race lead away from Derek Bordeaux for the first time this evening on lap 116 of 200.
Not done, however, James, as Bordeaux's going to go back to the bottom, slides back into line coming off of turn number 2. Keister now leading the race for the first time tonight. We'll see how much better his tires are and when he is going to pit versus Derek Bordeaux. Could this change Bordeaux's strategy through this green flag run? Is he going to pit earlier? Maybe try and make a pass on Keister going into the pit lane. Here comes Bordeaux back to the bottom. They'll work their way back off too. He's not able to get side by side. Keister takes the lead, working his way now around the lap machine of Lockwood.
The pace just isn't there with Bordeaux's machine. So now here's my question for you, Jeff McConey. Why has Bordeaux's truck fallen off a little bit more than Keister's and even Parker Retzlaff's, who's making the charge just behind him?
Well, it could be a whole host of issues. It could just be this truck is not set up for the long run. They were expecting more cautions than they're getting right now. It could be he overdrove it. It could be he just slid the tires. There's so many things that could cause that truck to just fall off out of nowhere, it seems. It could be he's just not running the right line. He's looking for more grip all around. Parker Retzlaff behind, having a little bit of trouble in traffic, but able to work his way through now. He's got his sights set, and he's gaining on the trucks ahead of him. Colin Keister that last lap with a 25.74, a 25.992 for Parker Retzlaff there as he was working his way around traffic. But in the previous laps, he was gaining. So we'll have to see how it ends up working. But Colin Keister looks a little tight. He's getting it right out to that wall, and it just seems like that truck doesn't want to turn in the center. We'll see when they decide to make their pit stops, though, because that, I think when we see one, we're going to see the rest of them all come in.
Justin Prince, do you have any more information as to why Keister might be so quick or maybe so tight?
Well, he is really tight. And it was talked about right before that pass that he has been looking around to try and find grip. So they have been struggling to get that rotation down. As well, can confirm for the Bordeaux camp that they are a bit tight right now. Their goal is the need to keep clean air on their trucks. So different thought process going on from the various camps in this battle for the lead.
That would explain why Bordeaux is running the inside and trying to keep some air on the nose of his Toyota Tundra as Keister runs the outside. And now maybe the big question is, what do we expect from Parker Retzlaff? And or can we expect anything from Parker Retzlaff? How about a pit stop as he comes in from third position? So there's your first truck of the race leaders to make a stop, as Jeff McConey said. And now the question will be whether or not everybody else decides to follow suit, Jeff.
We'll see, as now all of a sudden a lot of drivers are calling pitting and coming in. Santiago Tires is going to be making his stop. But
immediate response from the race leaders is, well, Keister and Bordeaux in this time.
Yep, there they come. And now Colin Bowden decides to stay out, though. Dylan Alt, as well as some of the other drivers out there, though. Casey Tucker is going to stay out on track. Depends on how much you want to gamble, but now is sort of the time to come in and make your stop. These last laps they're running are 25 now, so their fastest laps, though, are going to be a lot quicker than that, down in the 24.1. So a second and a half easy, as now the leader comes in once again. Casey Tucker going to inherit the lead.
Casey Tucker takes the lead. Colin Bowden comes in from pit road. We'll head down to Justin Prince as the leaders make green flag pit stops.
And big service for these drivers right now. For Blake McCandless, who just left pit road moments ago, there was no adjustments from his camp. The rest of the competitors rolling their way slowly but surely in towards the pit box. Keep in mind that some of the drivers, including McCandless, reporting that they are currently loose on the fresh tires with the cold rubber. More pit calls coming in across the radio with the split calls among some of the various teammates, in fact, in some of these camps, as seen with Burns with the 2-stop, Brady among the 1-stoppers for the HBM camp.
Also note, Colin Keister was able to beat out Derek Bordeaux from pit road, but more importantly, Parker Retzlaff was able to jump ahead of both of them, and by a decent amount as well. So Retzlaff short pitched by 1 lap, Jeff McConey, and it makes a huge difference. He's up the racetrack by maybe 5-6 seconds. Why is that gap so big, and why does it matter so much here as opposed to, maybe a Texas or maybe a Michigan or one of the larger tracks we go through?
Well, at only a mile, you are carrying a lot of momentum through the corners. Like we talked about earlier, it's about 25-mile-an-hour difference from your top speed to the center of the corner speed, which really is not all that much. So you come in early, you are going to be a second and a half per lap quicker than the guys that stay out. So this is a good call by Parker Retzlaff here. He's got the lead over by about 2 seconds over Colin Keister, Derek Bordeaux. Then the drivers that are 1 down, Blake McCandless, Spencer Burns, Colin Bowden, they're all fighting to get back up on the lead lap. But tonight's big winner, if the strategy ends up playing out, is Briar LaPrat. He's a second behind Casey Tucker. He's already made a stop. The only downside is that truck is running 25 O's when everyone else is running 24 1s, 2s, because he pitted so much earlier, about 28 laps ago.
You would figure, if you're Briar LaPrat, and correct me on this if I'm wrong, but just reading the strategy here, if you're LaPrat, you definitely want this race to go as green, as long as you possibly can, right?
I would say I don't think they can make it to the end on fuel while everyone else can. So everyone else is going to be staying out, but he wants a caution right about lap 150 to 180. would be best for him pretty much when he is still ahead of he wants a caution when the leaders are right at his back bumper, but not around him. He wants as much time as possible running up towards the front here with this strategy, but he's not going to make it to the end, and when the leaders get to him, they're going to blow right by him. So he wants a caution right when the leaders catch him and not a second sooner, because that is how he maximizes it.
Also of note, Eddie Kerner currently runs in the 4th position. I'd say Eddie may want a yellow a little bit sooner than Brian LaPrade, because Eddie is now on his 82nd lap on this current set of tires. It's been a drive, to say the least, from the man out of Illinois. But Kerner currently in the 6th position as Derek Bordeaux makes the pass. We'll see just how much longer he holds out and hopes for yellow before he surrenders his battle and has to come down pit road for fresh tires.
And here comes Kerner in as Blake McCandless will go right on by for 6th. The 82-lap run bringing new definition to tires crying for Eddie Kerner. He comes in and he will get some fresh Goodyear Eagles on that car. But here is their current leader, Briar LaPrade. We talked about it. Jeff McConey talked about it. Same thing with you, James, of him just waiting around now because he had to come in a little bit earlier than everybody else, whether it was a strategy call or whether it was an unplanned pit stop. Either way, this is the hand that they were dealt now, so they need to be smart with it. I'm looking at his lap times compared to Daniel Eberhardt, and Eberhardt is on about 9 lap newer tires than Briar LaPrade, but that number 27 machine out of Warner Robins, Georgia, as he lets Michael Finlayson lap the machine go by, running about 5/10 quicker than Briar LaPrade. He is catching your race leader by about a couple of tenths a lap. He's down to 5.3 seconds. It was down to about 5 seconds flat there down the back straightaway. It goes under 5 seconds now as he goes back into 1. We can see a battle for the lead developing here, but there's a lot of lap traffic in between those two.
Plenty of lap traffic. The other thing you have to worry about, and Jeff McConey, I'll come back to you on this because I know you know it best, is that the gains that you make from fresh rubber diminish significantly as the laps go on. You can be maybe a full second quicker on lap 1 or lap 2, but you get to lap 10 or lap 20 and it becomes, maybe 5/10, then 4/10, then 3/10, then 2, and eventually it normalizes back to that central point, which tends to be somewhere in the ballpark of about maybe 25.6 or so. You'll see the lap times there for Daniel Eberhardt compared to Brian LaPrade, and see that Eberhardt's been about a half second quicker and now down to a 10th quicker. So those tires clearly fading on Eberhardt's machine.
They're fading on Eberhardt's machine, that's for sure, but I think the biggest person that you are concerned about is Parker Retzlaff, running 24.4s right behind him, and while Briar LaPrade is running 25.3s. So call that, he's about 10, 11 seconds back. In the next 10 laps, call it, Parker Retzlaff is going to be at Briar LaPrade. Within 12 laps, he's going to be around him. So that is under 6 minutes. That's when Briar LaPrade needs a caution. He needs one before Parker Retzlaff gets to him, preferably before Daniel Eberhardt gets to him. But if he gets to him, that's okay. But as soon as Retzlaff gets to him, Colin Keister, Derek Bordeaux, all those guys get to them, he is going to drop like a rock through the field. He needs a caution before that if he's going to have any chance of this strategy working out.
He needs big help some way, somehow, as we go back to the battle between Santiago Gutierrez and Drew Freenage. This is just a little bit further back in the field and working around positions as 10th and 11th as Freenage ducks to the inside to try and get around Gutierrez. Both these drivers stopped in 2 laps of one another, but it's the fresh rubber that clears the old rubber as Freenage's 13-lap-old tires beat out Gutierrez's 15-lap-old tires, and looks like there's company to the inside of Gutierrez down the form of the lap machine of Connor Horn, but it's Freenage that will take over that final spot in the top 10 and leave Gutierrez behind him.
And continuing to fight further up, taking a look at Blake McCandless, currently running in 6th, fell back a little bit from where he was before those green flag stops, and he pitted a handful earlier than a handful of those drivers. He's on about 17-lap-old tires, pitted about 1 lap later than Colin Keister and Derek Bordeaux. He pitted on the same lap as Parker Retzlaff, and it helped Retzlaff, helped McCandless a little bit as well, getting in front of Colin Bowden, Dylan Alton more. Here's an update on Daniel Eberhardt, and continuing to try and etch his way closer to that lead, but you can see those lap times starting to equal out, and Briar LaPrade is starting to see Daniel Eberhardt keep that gap about the same as Eberhardt starts to fall off. He gained about 2/10 last time by, but it's not going to be enough. 3.5 seconds still separating your race leaders.
Riding in the middle of a green flag run, waiting to see if the yellow flag will come that Briar LaPrade needs. We'll take a moment to get a quick word in from Circle Farm partners, but don't go anywhere. More action in the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from the virtual Rockingham Speedway coming up on Podium Esports.
When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. There's a reason that Makoni Setup Shop is trusted by more virtual and real-world tracks and companies than any other setup shop in iRacing. With partners such as Stafford Motor Speedway, the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, Five Flag Speedway, Speed 51, and more. When you want something done right, you go to the experts at Makoni Setup Shop.
With setups available for most series on both asphalt and dirt, built by a team of professional builders consisting of some of the top talents on the service, Makoni Setup Shop LLC has what you need to hit the track with confidence. Head over to MakoniSetupShop.com and learn why Makoni Setup Shop is the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports and is partnered with some of the largest names in virtual and real racing.
And remember, at Makoni Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Darlington Raceway, it's known as the Lady in Black, the track too tough to tame.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from the virtual Rockingham Speedway. It's round number 2, race number 4. James Pike, Josh Lee up at the tower, Jeff McConey, Colin Guard, crew chief shots, Justin Prince down on pit road, and Ryan Bauer, our producer for the evening. The camera's produced by Dougie Beard. Parker Retzlaff has just made his way up into second. He's gotten around Daniel Eberhardt and has been quicker than both Eberhardt and race leader Briar LaPrade over the last handful of laps. For more information from pit road, let's go to Justin Prince.
When it comes to LaPrade's camp, they are sticking to and are confident on their strategy, as they are indicating they plan to come in this time by for their final pit stop of the race. Now, the main thing emphasized by their camp is they feel that the call they're on could be 12 seconds quicker on paper on the racetrack. That's going to be very interesting how this plays out. Their goals were either to have a caution before that pit stop or it to go green. Now they need the latter of the two to see how things play out on this strategy.
I was about to say that for LaPrade to maximize this strategy, he needs 100% green flag racing the rest of the way. And even then, I don't know how much that's going to gain him. He's currently in 16th as we look at line time and scoring and dropping down the order, going a lap down just with the way things cycle out. But you could see these drivers try and stretch it the rest of the way. So I won't say it'll be impossible for him to make up at least some of that gap, but may be difficult for him to end up in the race lead. And even then, if we get a yellow flag late in the going, it could totally throw things out of whack. Jeff McConey.
Oh yeah, this is where things get crazy. So On paper, Briar LaPrad's strategy, they're saying, is 12 seconds faster. If that's true, that's huge. He's 1 lap down right now, back in 21st position. He's got a lot of ground to make up, but now he's going to be running down the 24s. Parker Retzlaff up at the front, running 25.15s. So his tires are starting to fall off here. If he starts battling with Colin Keister, Derek Bordeaux, Blake McCandless, if he's able to work his way back up there from 3.25 seconds back, but Blake McCandless is gaining on the leader. If those guys all get up there and start battling, that's going to help Briar LaPrade immensely. Briar at this point just needs to put down laps and click off 50 laps until the end of this race. 49 to go here. 48 to go now. He needs to make something happen. But I think if anyone's going to be able to do it, it's Briar LaPrade. He's on a hot streak. He's been doing really well, and he's in a position where he can gamble. He's out here to win, but you don't really want a 21st place finish after you've had a couple good weeks in a row. We'll see if Briar LaPrade's strategy ends up working. He needs this race to stay green to the end for it.
If no one pits, just off my chicken scratch math,
He's bottom of 3. Close call behind as the 28 takes damage. Briar LaPrade had to send it in there, but man, that was a very close call. Sorry to cut you off, but that was very close for Briar LaPrade. He's doing whatever he needs to do to get to the front.
I was going to get to it, and then you just jumped right on top of it, so no fault there. But as he passes all these trucks with the fresh rubber, just off my chicken scratch math, it looks like he would catch up to about where Max Brady is if nobody else pits. Let me go green the rest of the way. Now, of course, he also has to make sure he doesn't get run into the fence. Nearly had a run in there with Brian Lockwood. But there is time to be gained for LaPrade. There is space to be gained for LaPrade if this goes green. But again, it has to go green the rest of the way for Briar LaPrade to maximize the returns on this pit strategy. So LaPrade will try and run his way up the grid from 20th. Parker Retzlaff is your race leader ahead of Colin Keister. And again, that was 1 lap difference. Retzlaff came in a lap before Keister did, so they're virtually on the same rubber, but the short pit has been a very big call from Retzlaff, and what may even be bigger for him, the fact that Keister and Bordeaux are about to get into it for P2, Josh Lee.
They're going to go fighting down into turn number 1. Retzlaff not too much out of the weeds with this battle for second. He's only about 1.1 seconds up the road from second place Colin Keister. Bordeaux now going to fall to roughly about 4/10 as they dive back into turn 3. Keister still running that outside line. No surprise here. Both of the Space Station Gaming cars have been preferring that outside line, specifically later into a tire run. Blake McCandless, he's been favoring that top line all day. No surprise to see him up there either. He is looking to try and stay up there and stay up in 4th. Colin Keister, fastest car in the front of this field at the moment, looking to keep on climbing his way through these cars and getting back up to the race leader. He has 1 car in between them two. It's Moose there in the number 24.
Keister was the fastest truck in the top 10 that last time by, outside of Casey Tucker, who rides in 7th. So we may want to keep an eye on Tucker's machine. But for now, Keister is reeling in Retzlaff, reeling in the race leader, and potentially setting himself up for a run towards the trophy and the checkered flag, and potentially setting us up for a very entertaining finish here at Rockingham. Meanwhile, Blake McCandless still ahead of Colin Bowden. Dylan Auld in the mix too. Everybody just sort of bunched in there, but not too many side-by-side battles for the moment. As we'll take a moment to let you all know that if you are interested in partnering with Podium Esports, there's space available for you. Podium Esports is a plan for every budget and can custom tailor solutions to suit your needs best. And for more information on the wide variety of partnership possibilities, send an email to admin@podiumesports.com. We are in the final 40 laps of tonight's race here in the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series at the virtual Rockingham Speedway. And for the moment, it is Parker Retzlaff in control of this race. Everybody relatively spread out amongst this field, save for Colin Bowden and Dylan Auld, who are racing for 5th.
And down to the bottom of another car. That's going to be Parker Retzlaff for Briar LaPrade. So that means he gains his lap back under green flag conditions. If LaPrade can keep this up, like Jeff McConey said, he could be in the catbird seat for another race win, or at least a good finish here tonight. Currently running in 16th as he unlaps himself and looks for more positions on the racetrack. Retzlaff, Keister, Bordeaux, McCandless, and everybody else at the front of this field starting to show the tire wear, as multiple cars that pitted a little bit before them and pitted a couple of laps ago, I should say, starting to work their way around them, get themselves back onto the lead lap. Bordeaux about a 10th.5 faster last time by than Colin Keister as they continue to battle for P2.
Bordeaux trying to reel in Keister as Keister tries to reel in Retzlaff. It may be tightening towards the front of this field, and we may see more action yet. Meanwhile, Blake McCandless and Colin Bowden in a whale of a battle for 4th and 5th, and then Dylan Alt holding off Casey Tucker for the moment. And actually not terribly far behind the battle between Bowden and McCandless for 4th.
Now taking a look at Casey Tucker. He's been up in the top 10 for pretty much the entire day. Good day for him. Down 4 spots from where he started, qualified up in 3rd, but nothing to slouch at with a top 10 finish in 7th. Dylan Alt, winner 1 week ago, or 2 weeks ago rather, at Watkins Glen in the 2nd split. He's looking for a top 5 on Colin Bowden, and his Colin Bowden's teammate, the other Space Station Gaming machine, the number 33 of Colin Keister, he's gonna have a mirror full of Derek Bordeaux. Here comes Bordeaux down to the bottom, runs off of turn number 4. Keeping the spot is gonna be Keister. Bordeaux running the bottom line now, trying something different when he can, because you can see him running that outside line. He gets up out of the groove a lot more than Colin Keister does when they're up by that wall, but Bordeaux needs to try something different, because whatever Colin Keister's doing right now, it's working for the 33 as he keeps 2nd place.
Is indeed, and he's kept that thing up on the fence just like he did in the green flag run that wrapped up around lap 110, 115 or so. But in the run that we had before, the same sort of thing where he just pinned it up against the white concrete of the fence and ran it as high as he could and kept the air off everybody else's nose and just wasn't able to give anybody room on the inside to pass. And Bordeaux's trying to drive it in on corner entry as deep as he possibly can. But Jeff McConey, whether or not it's momentum, whether or not it's grip, whether or not it's aero, could be a combination of all 3, but the end result right now is that Colin Keister is not giving up 2nd just yet.
No, he's going to fight with everything he's got to keep on that 2nd position, because I guarantee you their spotters and crew chiefs are saying, heads up, there's some drivers on fresh tires that are coming. Daniel Everhart, Briar LaPrade being the 2 main names. I'm sitting here doing the math. It looks like it could go Briar LaPrade's way. He's been gaining each and every lap. His last lap as he's working through traffic was a 24.683. For Parker Retzlaff, a 25.459, and Parker's in clean air. So Briar LaPrade, he's got a good chance of getting his way up to the front. Daniel Eberhard is only 1.8 seconds back, though. He could also throw his hat in the ring and make something happen.
Names a little bit further back, but on the fresher rubber, as LaPrade and Eberhard came in some 21 laps ago. Everybody else somewhere in the ballpark of 47 to 50 laps on their tires if you are the race leader, Parker Retzlaff, as we inch towards 25 laps to go. Good look at Garrett Conrath there running in the 11th position, and he's just about a second back of Brad Wright, who's got the last spot in the top 10. These two have been pretty stable, anywhere between maybe call it 7th or 8th and 17th, 18th over the course of the evening. But Josh Lee, for Conrath in particular, who was part of that Kyle Pedal wreck that sent everybody flying around the back straightaway, to have that much damage on the nose, albeit not too much damage, but still, to get involved in a wreck like that and end up right on the edge of the top 10, I think Garrett Conrath will take that if this is how it ends up.
He very much will take that. You can see the damage on the back end of that number 9 machine as he works his way back down the back straightaway. I mentioned him earlier, up and down day for him, down 4 spots from where he started, but like you mentioned, James, with all the attrition he's had to go through here today at Rockingham, he's just looking for any good finish he can possibly get, and a top 10 is going to be that if he can work his way up into that top 10. Briar LaPrade on that outside line, making it work. He goes up into 12th, still knocking down cars as he tries to get back up to the front.
He just cleared his teammate Michael Finlayson and took over the 12th position. Conrad is the next car in line for LaPrade, who continues to be quicker than everybody else ahead of him by about a half second as it stands. So given the pace here, might be maybe a handful of laps before LaPrade and Conrad are fighting for position. And maybe, just maybe, we might see LaPrade in the top 10 before too long. As we remind you all that if you are so inclined and so interested, the Podium Esports Retro 500 is indeed coming up. One more qualifying race at Darlington Raceway in the heat of the sun using the 1987 Chevrolet Monte Carlo and Ford Thunderbird to set the 41-car field for Labor Day proper's 367-lap, 500-mile feature race in the heat of the day. It is the ultimate driver's test in stock car racing. You want the hardest conditions with one of the most difficult cars to drive at the hardest track. You want the challenge of just how good of a driver you are. The Retro 500 is for you, and you can race your way in via that final qualifying race that will take place at 9 p.m. next Wednesday night on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. For more information, you can log on to podiumesports.com/Retro500 or use the chat command !Retro500 here in the Twitch chat to take you to that URL as well and sign up today. $500 going to the winner of the feature event on Monday night, September 6th. Retzlaff in control of this. LaPrade continuing to creep along and make his way towards Santi Tires. We'll see just how much time he can gain on the rest of this field, but there's no doubt about the pace of LaPrade's Ledford Billiard Supply Ford F-150. He is still the quickest driver out there, albeit now down by maybe 0.3 of a second compared to everybody else. But at this point, Jeff McConey, I think it almost becomes a game of where you catch the lap traffic and where you catch these other drivers. That, I think, more than anything else, is going to determine just how much Brian LaPrade is able to gain.
You're exactly right. It's a game of time now. Does Breyer have enough time to work his way up to the front? He's up to 9th. Up next for him to knock down is Drew Farinaj, not too far ahead, about 2 seconds up. Then Casey Tucker, Colin Bolden, Dylan Alt, Blake McCandless, who is side by side with Dylan Alt. Then Derek Bordeaux, Colin Kieser, and finally Parker Retzlaff. Those are the drivers that stand between Breyer LaPrade and his second win in this Road to Pro Series Round 2. We'll see if he's got enough time to do it, though. He's quicker. His last lap, 25.475 versus a 5.80 from Retzlaff, but that traffic and going through it has really burnt up Brian LaPrade's stuff.
He did have a pretty heavy thicket to work through there. Clear of it now. There's no one in between LaPrade and Friedans. It's just 1.8 seconds of racetrack, and then the lap machine that just slipped into the picture of Seth Knoll. So one truck there, but looking at lap times again, it was a 25.1 to a 25.7, so LaPrade still quicker, and now he's moved to the outside lane to just try and free up the air on that nose and maybe not only cool down the engine, but run a different bit of line too.
And they work off of the corner. Michaelis on that outside line, trying to hold off Dylan Alt. He does so. We go back to the battle for 6th. Bowden still on that outside line. Gets a little bit too far up out of the groove. He doesn't make contact with the wall, but inches away from it. He'll keep 6th place. Casey Tucker going to stay in 7th. And an update for the viewers wondering about split 2. Donovan Strauss leads the way over there. It's Liam Brotherton, Jordy Lopez Jr., Seth DeMerchant, and Michael Cosi Jr. top 5, with Brian Mercurio knocking on the door of the top 5 at the moment. So another dominating day for Donovan Strauss. He is looking at his 3rd win of round number 2 to keep the points lead.
That is a terrifyingly fast driver at this point. If Strauss can pull that all 3 wins in the 2nd round, I don't think anybody would be able to touch him. That may end up just being the high watermark for anyone in this series this year. Just depends on whether or not that'll be enough to get him into the Contender Series. As Brian LaPrade is still 0.3 faster than Drew Friedage, and what was a 1.8 second gap, let's now maybe call it a truck length gap now, Jeff?
Just about, but he needs more speed. At this rate, he now no longer is going to catch Parker Retzlaff before the end of the race. A caution can go either way. He can go with one or go without one for Brian LaPrade. It may help, it may not. it all now will come out in the wash as his strategy and his tires are pretty much even with the guys up ahead of him. He works his way around Drew Freenage with ease. That puts him up to 8th place, but now he's got about 3 seconds up to Colin Bowden and still over 11 up to Parker Retzlaff. And with only 15 laps to go, he needs to be a little bit quicker here if he wants to catch him.
You're 0.3 a lap faster. That gives you about 5 seconds, and that would get him in the ballpark of Dylan Alt, probably. He'd land somewhere between Alt and McCandless if this pace can hold for the rest of the race, and that would give him a top 5. I don't think he'd complain about it, but I would think that the folks at Lockdown, who have been so particularly strong in putting together their strategies, which traditionally have been a little bit all sequence in this Road to Pro series, I think they want a little bit more than just a top 5. Wouldn't be sad about it, but I think they had win on their mind here, just like they did at Homestead Miami, as LaPrade continues to try and track down the folks in front of him. Next on the list will be Colton Bowden, who runs in the 7th position. If you're wondering about your race leader, though, Parker Retzlaff, Clean Air has done wonders for that truck. He's still out in front by 1.4 seconds ahead of Keister. Bordeaux is right there. And then how about Blake McCandless, Casey Tucker, Dylan, all in a big thicket. This is the battle of the race so far, and the battle of the race right now for P4.
Alt on the outside line, Casey Tucker on the bottom, and you see McCandless running that outside line still as well. Dylan Alt running exactly in the tire tracks of McCandless, as McCandless gets a little loose coming off of turn number 4. Tucker gonna have to surrender the battle for fifth for the moment. He goes back to the bottom as Tucker looks to be better down there. Dylan Alt preferring that outside line. They'll stay side by side. Alt getting loose over the bumps, keeps his speed up. He is gonna clear Casey Tucker going down into 3. Looked like he might have thought about closing that door for a moment, decided against it. Stays up on the top of the racetrack as they come across the line for 10 laps to go.
Dylan Alt in P5, surely now, as Tucker sends it in deep on the inside to try and get some sort of foothold alongside Alt's Toyota Tundra, but there's just nothing there for him, or is there? He got a great run out of 2 that time and is able to draw even with Alt's machine, and maybe, just maybe, this isn't over yet.
Back through the corner they go, off of 4. Alt on the outside line, able to get just a nose still out in front of Casey Tucker. If Tucker has enough tires to dive it into the bottom of the racetrack to really try and make that pass happen, he just doesn't have enough down on that bottom line. He's gonna stay in the 6th spot for the moment. Alt is gonna stay in 5th as they all work their way back through 3 and 4. Off of 4 they go, on board with Casey Tucker.
Casey Tucker trying to get underneath Alt, just didn't have enough, and now they are pretty well sorted in line. I think Alt is going to commit to just trailing Blake McCandless, who will hang on to 4th for the moment. He may have questions to answer, though, from Alt and that Tundra, too, if he's not careful. So maybe a battle potentially for 4th instead of this battle for 5th that we've seen, because Casey Tucker's tried the bottom, but Jeff McConey, the momentum to stay alongside Alt's truck just is not there.
No, it's not. It's so close, this battle between the two. McCandless has been strong on the outside all night. Dylan Alt doing everything he can to work his way around, but it's not easy. Blake McCandless is doing everything that he needs to do, and Casey Tucker now is riding that bottom. He's looking to make something happen down below. Dylan Alt, you have to wonder if he's focused on the truck ahead or the truck behind, and all this battling here is letting Colin Keister pull away, Derek Bordeaux pull away a little bit, but Parker Retzlaff is extending his lead out, and Briar LaPrade is just now catching Colin Bowden, so we'll see where he ends up. In about 5 more laps this race will end. There still could be a caution. We can't rule that out totally yet, but that would really throw a wrench into things if there were one.
5 to go, and oh, by the way, speaking of trucks that have joined this battle that we've been watching for the last 5 laps, guess who's in the mix here, Josh Lee?
Getting into it, here comes Briar LaPrade. He's going to look to the bottom of Colin Bowden. Like you guys mentioned, LaPrade's strategy did not work out the way I think his team intended it to, but now he's just trying to salvage any positive position he can get on the racetrack. He wants it. He goes to the inside of Colin Bowden. They dive back into 1. LaPrade running right up against that apron. Everybody around him running the outside line, but LaPrade's going to try and close the door. Caution flag is called with 4 to go. The yellow is back out.
Kenny Brady in trouble, and Jeff McConey. This changes everything for the race leaders.
Evan, I don't know where you're watching from. All I know is you're not in this booth right now, Evan Pasoko, but this is your fault. With just a few laps to go now, a big wreck, and this throws everything for a loop. And you know who I think might be in the best position? We saw how quick he was on the restarts. We saw how strong he was on the short runs. Briar LaPrade. Tape this thing up. Get ready to roll, because this is where you earn the money with a green-white checkered.
You see the incident there. Kenny Brady said, and I quote, "You can thank whoever nailed me," and he has a decent point. Looks like there was contact there with one of the trucks underneath in the SK Sim Racing machine that belonged to Dylan Jones. I think got into Jeremy Davis, who then got into Kenny Brady. So a bit of a chain reaction there. But Brady ends up in the wall, and we are in green-white checker territory, and it is going to be nothing short of a show and a half, I think. Maybe one of the best restarts we'll see all year, Josh Lee.
And over the radio, Casey Tucker, who's running up in the front, just said, "Congrats, you just turned this race into a meme." I feel like we're about to see one of the most exciting restarts of Road to Pro history here in this final green-white checker, but working their way now out of the pit lane. Who's going to be out first? Colin Keister with what a move on the exit of pit road. He's going to take the lead. Bordeaux to second. Retzlaff falls to third. Alton McCandless rounding out the top 5. And what an exit of pit road for Space Station Gaming's Colin Keister.
Brilliant work there from Keister. I was about to say that was in part because Retzlaff overshot his box coming into his stall, and that's why he lost the race lead, and how he may end up kicking himself as a result. This race was his by almost a second and a half, and that lead not only is completely evaporated, but he won't even be the control car on this restart, Jeff McConey.
Yeah, that's a huge mistake there for Parker Retzlaff. So he's going to restart third. At least he's got the inside line. Briar LaPrade now in 6th, Blake McCandless 5th, Dylan Alt 4th, Parker Retzlaff 3rd, and Derek Bordeaux 2nd, with Colin Keister leading the way. But I'll tell you what, we saw Briar LaPrade make up 3-4 spots on each restart. If there's another quick caution, then it could be even better. I think LaPrade could make something happen here from the 3rd row. This is going to be a crazy finish. I'm very excited for it. And you know Derek Bordeaux, Parker Retzlaff are not going to let Colin Keister get away. This is going to be some insane racing. This is where these guys are going to earn their spots in the next round.
So, friendly reminder of the rules here. We'll have 3 attempts at a green-white checker. We'll show the green flag, and then the white flag, and then the checkered flag to end the race. We'll go as long as we need to within those 3 starts to try and make it happen. If we get a yellow flag before the leader takes the white flag, we'll have another restart. If we go 3 restarts and we get 3 yellow flags, the race will be called at the end of that 3rd restart once the yellow flag comes out, and the leader at that point will win the race if he can come around a complete lap. If we get the white flag, we will race back to the checkered flag no matter what happens. Remind you, though, of some of the events coming up in the world of Podium Esports quickly before this final restart. The SigMax Cup Series, powered by MPI, ends to Martinsville this Sunday night, 9:15 p.m. Eastern, on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. The Monday Night Racing playoffs continue. The penultimate race of the season for the Xfinity machines at Auto Club. Podium 2's got pre-race at 7:45. Operation eMotorsport, the Podium Esports Retro 500, the Jim Beaver Esports Short Course Triple Crown, and the MSRA Premier Series all coming your way this week on Podium Esports. But it is time for the biggest restart of the night. First attempt at a green-white checker. Colin Keister, your leader. Derek Bordeaux in 2nd. How nuts may this get as we go racing? Oh, there was a big shove there from Parker Retzlaff, and it nearly upended Colin Keister, and it stacked everybody up behind them. Josh Lee, they're 3, they're 4 wide into 1 at points.
Briar LaPrade up the middle, going 3 wide, falling on the outside line. That's Colin Bowden. LaPrade gives a shot to Dylan Alt, trying to get around him for the 4th spot. They all dive into the corner. They're wrecking in the back. The caution is back out. Mayhem on the back straightaway.
There was a big incident towards the back of the field. I saw one truck go completely around, and I believe it may have been I couldn't quite tell. We'll see if we can get a nose on who ended up with the damage or who didn't. But one truck just pounded the inside wall, and I believe the culprit may be Jeremy Davis.
We'll grab a look at this replay here. Yes, it was Jeremy Davis coming off of turn 3. Looked like he had to get out of the gas for one reason or another. He was bottom of 3 wide, so it meant either he got loose down in the apron or got tight all of a sudden, got out of the gas, and he suddenly had a mirror full to 57. One slight contact sent him down into the wall, and a hard contact, I believe that was Spencer Burns, and he almost went flipping, able to save it. Yes, it was Spencer Burns, Ocean City, New Jersey driver. But the 2-truck incident on the back straightaway, James, we're going for a second overtime attempt, and I don't think we're exactly done with the wrecking.
I don't think we are either, and it was Spencer Burns that got into Jeremy Davis. Looks like both of those drivers on pit road, and I wouldn't necessarily outright say done for the night, but pretty close to it. So 2 less trucks that will be on the racetrack for this final restart. So, Jeff McConaughey, now that we're sitting here, did you figure out anything in that half lap that we saw for the race leaders? Anything that we might be able to carry to the second rewind checker? Maybe outside of Brian LaPrade being more than willing to just outright go for it if he needs to?
I figured out I'm very glad I'm up here in the booth and not down on the track or on top of a pit box, because man, that was some crazy stuff there. But yeah, you are going to see a lot of people up at the front do whatever they need to do. Brian LaPrade was in the middle of 3. He gave a shot to the back bumper of Dylan Alt. No damage to either truck, but Alt was going after it. LaPrade's going after it. Now, LaPrade is going to be restarting on the inside behind Retzlaff. Retzlaff was pushing Colin Keister to the line. He was right on that back bumper. So we saw people in the 4th row making jumps to try and get as much speed as they possibly could, as much momentum going on the outside. So many things can happen here, and everyone's going to be fighting for every single square inch. I don't know if it's better to be on the inside or the outside here. It can go either way. It just depends on how the driver is, but this is going to be a crazy finish. You know, Josh, you said you don't think they're done wrecking. I'm not going to say whether or not I agree with you, but it's going to be something here towards the end.
Could well be. Could well be indeed. Josh Lee, any expectations?
Honestly, the only thing I'm expecting is Parker Retzlaff to try something. I'm expecting Brian LaPrade to try something. He has an opportunity to take this race win. He's only sitting back there in 5th. If he goes 3 wide down into 1, like he did on that last overtime restart, we could be looking at Brian LaPrade trying to charge his way up to the lead. But only time's going to tell. Lights out on the pace car. We're getting ready to rack him up and send him back into turn number 1.
Lights are off on the pace car. Keister in control of this. And again, a reminder that Parker Retzlaff was into the rear bumper of Colin Keister on that first attempt at the green-white checker. It got Keister upended a little bit. Bordeaux had to check up, and it forced everybody behind Retzlaff to go 2 and 3 wide. So I don't know whether or not the idea is to try and cause a little chaos, but if that's what Retzlaff was going for, it certainly worked, because we had people all over the place up in the top 5 and the top 10. Whether or not it stays that way, we'll find out, just like the rest of you will, as the pace car will come to turns 3 and 4. This will be our second attempt at a green-white checker of 3. If we get another yellow flag here before the white comes out, we'll have one more shot at this. Otherwise, we're going to the end. Pace car comes down onto pit road. Better restart for Keister that time, and it'll be cleaner across the board, so it might not be as hectic up in the front, but they're still door-to-door at Rockingham. Anything can happen.
Retzlaff on the bottom of Derek Bordeaux. He's going to take second. Has his eyes set on Colin Keister now to try and fight for the race win. Yellow flag is back out. We're going to rack him up a 3rd time.
I believe it was Michael Frisch that ended up around. I saw him get knocked around just a bit, because it looked like Santiago Tires overdrove turn 1 on that restart. That's exactly what happened. You'll take a look at replay with Tires not quick enough on the brakes, running the bottom, and just drove right up into Michael Frisch and sent him sideways. Incidental contact. Don't think Frisch picked up much damage from it, but we are down to our final attempt at a green, white checker finish. So now, I think, Jeff McConey, if you're Colin Keister, this situation just got a lot more ideal for you, because you run this, and if you get that white flag in one of these first two green-white checkers here at Rockingham, usually you end up with some craziness, but I would say, given the way these restarts have played out, the likelihood is high that we may end up getting the yellow before we get the white. And if Keister's the first truck across the timing loops, he may be able to just waltz to this.
You are exactly right. So if you're Colin Keister, you're hoping for a caution right away. Green flag and then immediately a yellow right after. That's what you want. But if you're one of these other drivers behind, you're going to be doing everything you can. Briar LaPrade made up another position there. Parker Retzlaff made up a position. So now it's going to be all on this restart. This is the last attempt. They only get 3 attempts at green-white checkers here. So this is your last chance to make something happen. This is where it's going to be craziest, but if they can keep these trucks pointed straight, we're going to see a great finish here at Rockingham. That is for sure.
And not only is it the last chance for these drivers up at the front to gain spots, but it's the last chance for the drivers at the back of the field to gain spots. And I think, yes, it's an obvious statement, but it's one that bears repeating, because these incidents that have brought out the yellows to restart our green-white checker processes, Josh Lee, they've all come from about 20th on back.
And we're looking at a battle in the back of the field specifically, where we got a lot of drivers that want to get those last minute points. Dylan Altz is going to dive into the pit lane. Not sure what's going on for the 42, but he pits from 6th. He's going to lose a ton of positions here. Not sure, they might have cut it too close on fuel. Jeff McConey, if that's even a thing that could happen in this scenario, but Alt's in the pit lane.
Well, that is certainly not what you want to see, but he's coasting into pit lane at 18, 19 miles an hour. That makes me think that he probably ran it out of fuel. But who else now is going to run out? Who else is not going to be able to make it to the end? This is going to be very close now. We weren't even thinking about that. We weren't thinking about the fuel. We weren't thinking about any of that. We were just thinking about surviving until the end. But these drivers need to make it to the end on fuel. And if they run out, they are going to be in trouble. If they can't maintain pace speed, they could lose the spots. This is the last chance, though, for these drivers. We have over 300 people watching this finish here. These drivers are going to put on a show. You do not want to miss this, so stay tuned, because they are getting ready to go back green.
I think you end up with one of two options that play out here. Either it's another early yellow and Colin Keister can cruise to victory, or somehow this magically gets the white flag, in which case I'm not going to try and place bets on what will happen, because all I know is that the unexpected will most likely happen, and you will see the best drivers outside of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series go for broke and then some to try and win this 4th race in the 2nd round of the 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing Series for the virtual Rockingham Speedway. James Mike, Josh Lee, Jeff McConey, Justin Prince, Ryan Bauer here to bring you what could be a 2-lap finish, what could be a 2-corner finish. We don't know. But again, we get the yellow before we get the white. It is over, and Colin Keister, or whoever happens to be the lead at the moment of caution, will be able to cruise around if they have enough fuel and win this race. There are a lot of variables in play. We'll try and keep track of all of them for you over these last 2 laps. One more crack at this as the pace car comes on, and Keister will go maybe earlier than he has on any other green-white checker, restarting off. They fan into turn 1 for what could be the second to last time.
Try to go throw a block on Parker Retzlaff, worked to an extent. Retzlaff now on the outside of Bordeaux as they race off turn 2. They're 2 by 2, a couple of rows deep. Cars fanning out, trying to go for as many positions as they possibly can. They work their way through turns 3 and 4. They are going to get around on the white flag. It'll be 1 lap to go at Rockingham with Colin Keister trying to get the win.
They will go. One more lap here. What can Derek Bordeaux do? What can Parker Retzlaff do? Does anybody have anything for Colin Keister? Bordeaux's going to get clear of everyone behind him. He'll have one opportunity to send it in as far as he can in 3 and 4, but it won't be enough. And Colin Keister will come off of turn 4, and the Frostburg, Maryland man will win at Rockingham in the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series ahead of Bordeaux, Retzlaff, LaPrade, and Bowden. He controlled the restarts brilliantly, beautifully, and that last one, Jeff McConey, may have been the best of them all.
You are absolutely right. He did everything perfect, exactly what he needed to do, and 214 laps later, Colin Keister comes out the winner. But that was some steep competition as well. Derek Bordeaux, Parker Retzlaff, Brian LaPrade, Colin Bowden, all right on the back bumper. That could have made something happen. Blake McCandless was strong all night, and somehow, some way, everyone made it to the end on fuel with everything else.
Tonight's winning moment for Colin Keister is brought to you by Martin Sports, who strives to produce the best custom apparel for your needs. Whether it's shirts for your office, jerseys for a local sports team, or specifically designed apparel for your sim racing team, Martin Sports has you covered. They offer sim racing gloves specifically designed for the discipline that are lightweight, breathable, and complete with padded leather palms. And you can visit their website at martinsports906.com for more information. We'll take a quick break here and be back with the post-race show to talk to Colin Keister and all the top finishers in tonight's eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series event from the virtual Rockingham Speedway. You're watching coverage on Podium Esports.
When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. There's a reason that McConey Setup Shop is trusted by more virtual and real-world tracks and companies than any other setup shop in iRacing. With partners such as Stafford Motor Speedway, the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, Five Flag Speedway, Speed 51, and more. When you want something done right, you go to the experts at McConey Setup Shop.
With setups available for most series on both asphalt and dirt, built by a team of professional builders consisting of some of the top talents on the service, McConey Setup Shop LLC has what you need to hit the track with confidence. Head over to McConeySetupShop.com and learn why McConey Setup Shop is the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports and is partnered with some of the largest names in virtual and real racing.
And remember, at McConey Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Darlington Raceway. It's known as the Lady in Black, the track too tough to tame.
Welcome back to the post-race show for Podium Esports coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series from the virtual Rockingham Speedway, where Colin Keister goes to victory lane ahead of Derek Bordeaux. Parker Retzlaff was third this evening. Brian LaPrade finished in fourth. Top five went to Colin Bowden. Blake McCandless was sixth. Daniel Eberhardt finished in the seventh spot. Michael Finlayson with a nice recovery job went to eighth. Casey Tucker finished in the ninth spot, and 10th went to Drew Friedage.
Dylan Jones, even after his incident early on in the race, rallies back for an 11th spot. How about Garrett Conrath also rallying back from damage for 12th? Max Brady, same to him. He finishes in 13th. Santiago Tires in 14th. Kenny Brady rounding out the top 15 with Connor Horn in 16th. Eddie Kerner, another one of those drivers who struggled early on. He comes home with a top 20 finish in 17th. Seth Noel, Dylan Alt, after presumably running out of fuel there before the last restart, he was able to come home with 19th, and Patrick Moose running out the top 20.
Michael Frisch finished in 21st, and Agnell Phillip in 22nd. Brian Lockwood comes home 23rd. Michael Grilly 24th. 12 laps down was Jeremy Davis, involved in a late wreck, in 25th, alongside Spencer E. Burns in 26th. Brad Wright 27th. Justin Bolton 28th. Then 122 laps down was Brian Blackford in 29th. 162 down was Kyle Peddle in 30th, alongside Mitchell Hunt, Nicholas Morris, and Frank DeAngelis rounding out this field.
Let's take a look at that last restart for Colin Keister and just show you one more time how he managed to get the victory. Got a good jump here on this one. It was the best jump of the three green-white checker restarts that we had. And then I think Josh Lee got to play into the fact that Bordeaux and Retzlaff were fighting so hard against one another, he was able to open up enough of a gap to where by the time Bordeaux finally got clear to lap, not much he could do. He was too far back.
That definitely helped him, and you can see even Parker Retzlaff going way up to the wall. Wasn't exactly doing all that he could to catch up to Colin Keister. There's the white flag there. They dived back into one. You can see Retzlaff still trying to fight from that outside line. Bordeaux on the bottom, even with the side force of Derek Bordeaux. Once that went away, just nothing he could do to catch Colin Keister. Bordeaux was the truck that was strongest early on. He qualified on the pole, but late in the race wasn't anything for Colin Keister. That Space Station Gaming Ford F-150 came across the start-finish line, and take a look. Cars going down into the grass to try and make a pass. That looked to be Colin Bowden going for fourth on Brian LaPrade. He still ends up in fifth, but going for a bit of a pass in the grass there.
So, plenty of fun, plenty of work, plenty of action for Colin Keister, but we start with the man who finished in third place. Jeff McConey is with Parker Retzlaff.
Parker, you had a great run out there. You led a bunch of laps here and a really solid night at the end. But what was going through your mind with all of those restarts when all of a sudden you have your first green-white checkered followed by another and another and another? What's your thought during all of those restarts?
Yeah, I mean, I was just so upset that the caution came out. It's just they really weren't racing for anything and kind of just took away the win from me. And then on, I think it was the second restart, I had a run on Collins on the backstretch and another caution came out, so I couldn't just get anything to fall in my favor at the end of the race to come out with the win that I feel like the whole team deserved.
Absolutely. It's been a strong season for you so far, but next week, the next race, I should say, what are you looking for to improve on this finish here tonight? Not that there's really much room to improve there with the top three.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to get the whole Legacy Esports back into victory lane. I mean, we were there in round one, and I feel like we should have been there tonight, but we will come back stronger than ever and get a win before the season's over.
Absolutely. Well, a strong run here tonight. Do you have any final thoughts on, some of the other drivers out there, or what you're expecting for this next race? If we're going to see a lot of cautions like we did tonight out of nowhere, where when one falls, there's a bunch that follow immediately after?
No, I mean, it's just people racing hard for positions. It was just kind of one mistake led to that last caution happening that screwed me out of the win. But all in all, it was a good night. Everyone put in hard work. And I just have to thank Boyd mainly, Chris, Hill, Jared Crawford, Randall, Ponzi, Ecotrax, Iron Horse Loggers, Blackstone Management Partners, Champion Power, Avalanche, Curb Records, and Blaster, and everyone else that puts anything into the truck.
Absolutely. Well, a strong run here tonight for you, Parker. A little bit of luck needed to go your way, and it just didn't fall in your favor, but still coming out with the top 3 finish. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Parker Retzlaff in third. Runner-up this evening was Derek Bordeaux. He is with Josh Lee.
And joining us now in the booth is Derek Bordeaux. Derek, you couldn't replicate the same magic you had at Atlanta and Talladega here tonight, but it was a dominant day for you. Talk about the early on in the race, qualifying on the pole and trying to gap the rest of the field in the 04, because it looked like it was a fast Duval Creative Toyota Tundra tonight.
Yeah, it was pretty solid. We kind of set up the truck for the bottom, and we've heard some talks about the high line gonna come in and whatnot, but once it actually came in, I don't know, I didn't practice the line, so I was not good, and I just couldn't figure it out as good as Colin was. But once I got also dirty air was I was literally tight. It was very bad in dirty air, so as soon as I got in dirty air, it was kind of over from there, and I was just hanging on to, I guess, third at the time.
So being in the lead, being in that clean air, it made that truck handle a lot better than it was back further in the pack. Do you think that the setup not exactly working with the dirty air was your downfall today? Because once you got back in that pack, like you did around mid-race, like you were late in that race, did it take you out of contention for that race win?
I'd say so, yeah. If the truck would have been, I mean, to be honest, if the truck would have been better in clean air, it would probably not even been, I would have probably never lost the lead. But maybe with the, I don't know, Parker got a massive lead. I think he got like 3 seconds or 3.5 by just short pitting 1 lap. So I don't know what happened there. He must have gotten a very good pit cycle, and me and Colin probably were a little shaky on the pit entry and exit. But I would say that if the truck would have been just a little looser, I might have won, but overall, I think Parker had the best truck anyways.
We're transitioning now, Rockingham, over to the Texas Motor Speedway. How was your preparation going for that race and going back to an intermediate track? Because we go back to Atlanta, race 2 of round number 1. You got the win there. That's an intermediate track. A lot more forgiving on the tires, I should say, than the Atlanta Motor Speedway. But going to Texas, you're going to take some similar stuff there and try and put the 04 Duval Creative Toyota Tundra back into victory lane for the first time since round 1?
Yeah, I mean, that's the plan. 1.5 intermediate tracks are kind of my strong suit, I feel like. New Texas, though, I don't know about that one. Old Texas, sure, but the new one is kind of iffy. So we're gonna get on that in the coming days. I'll cool down here and just get back to work and hopefully get us a good solid finish there.
Thank you very much for joining us here in the booth post-race. Derek, congratulations on your 2nd place finish here from The Rock.
Thank you.
Derek Bordeaux, 2nd place finisher, James, here at a very tough race at Rockingham Speedway.
The bad news for all of you watching at home is that we've not been able to get Colin Keister, but in his stead, we have another voice familiar to the folks who have watched Podium Esports for a while. It's the man who won the second race. Donovan Strauss now joins us. Donovan, 3rd win here in this series, just rolling them off for 4th rather. Now, I'm starting to lose count, but long story short, you have been nothing short of absolutely on fire as we turn the corner. Actually, yes, 3rd win in this round officially. What does that say about you? What's that say about your team?
I think that just shows how good the trucks have been on and how much work we've been putting in already. You see, and it's paid off to say the least, obviously with 3 wins this round. Yeah, that was probably the best truck I've driven all year. Like, I was perfect the whole race. I knew I started 2nd behind Cody, so when I was running him down the first run before the caution came out, and I knew I was really fast when I saw that was going to happen. And I mean, I don't even know what to say. We're locked into the Pro Series, I think, officially. I mean, I still have to show up, obviously, but if I show up, I think I'm still locked in. So I mean, that just says enough.
You are now, I believe, 40 points clear of 20th place. So effectively, I'd say that means you've got a race's worth playoffs. So I would think minimum you're locking in at this pace by the time we wrap up Bristol, which I think, all things considered, still that says a lot. So how much of this second round has been more about you, I think, with the focus on the Contenders Series, because we know how it played out for you last year, and you know how it played out for you last year, and you've said that you wanted to improve on that. It almost feels like that you've been looking past this to that, and that's what your focus is this time around. Is that the case in your mind, or are you just more of the mindset where you just want to win absolutely everything all the time?
I think a little bit of both, if I'm being honest, because I still want to try and help and get my teammates in. Obviously, with Dylan and Drew and Brendan on the outside, I want to try and get them in. But I've definitely already started a little messing around with the Xfinity car, so it's gonna be fun. But yeah, I'm gonna try and help them as much as I can, and I still want to go out and win. I mean, I still want to keep this win. I can't say I've won like 5 in a row, but I can say I've won the last 5 or so oval races. So I want to still try and keep that going. So it's been incredible, and I can't thank Blaze Crawford and Drew Freenage enough for all the help they've helped me with this week. They had us rolling, so big credit to them for helping me out. Can't thank Nutrient Ag Solutions enough for sponsoring me this round, of course. Can't thank Seth and JD enough for helping and spotting me in the race. It's been incredible.
You look at the list of places Donovan Strauss has won this year in the eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. It's a who's who of the fast tracks that are between a mile and a mile and a half in length. Darlington and Dover in the top split in round 1, and then in round 2, Knoxville, Homestead, Miami, and now Rockingham on that list. It is 5 wins in this season for Donovan Strauss. Donovan, congratulations, and we'll see you from Texas in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you.
Second split, second race, P2, Liam Brotherton in our booth now. He's joined by Josh Lee.
And Liam, it was a good day for you. Started in 3rd, came home in 2nd. What was missing today that held you back from getting past Donovan Strauss for that race win? Because you were catching him late in that race.
Yeah, first of all, I just got to thank everyone at Elliott Sadler Esports, my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, for giving us the opportunity to race. That car was so fast, and I'm so glad that I could finally get my head straight and finish where I wanted, or should have finished. Last couple weeks, we've had the pace. You've seen it out of Donnie to be up there. I either didn't qualify or would fall back through weird reasons and just kind of get stuck. Today, we were able to get up there and run well. For beating Donnie, you got to be perfect, and you got to have the clean air. And, in testing, I kind of showed him the outside, and we got everybody rolling up there, and I would start to catch him, and then he'd get up there, and I'd just get a little bit of arrow tight or whatever. I couldn't quite get all the way to him.
Well, thank you so much for joining us post-race here on Podium Esports. Liam, congratulations on that 2nd place, and face forward 2 weeks' time. We're going to Texas.
Yeah, for sure. It should be a lot of fun. Quick shout out to all of the supporters, Adam, Lucas, for all the PR stuff he does for me on Twitter. Thank you to clubjerky.com. You can go to Club Jerky, use code LiamB for 10% off. They support all kinds of sim racing. Really, really great guys. I love their support. Thank you to Elliott Sadler. Thank you to Donovan Strauss, all of the guys at Lowline as well. Thank you to my mother and family who always watch every week. It's been a lot of fun. Really, really looking forward to Texas, and then as we go to the end of the season. Thank you guys as well for broadcasting.
Liam Brotherton, 2nd place in race number 2, James.
3rd place in that race was Jordy Lopez. He is with our Jeff McConey.
Jordy, you had a great race out there in the 2nd split. What more could possibly be done, though, do you think, to catch Donovan Strauss at a place like Texas, which does share a lot of similarities to Darlington tonight?
I honestly really don't know. I gave it my heart out. I wasn't expecting the top to be so good, and I was just doing the best that I can in the bottom because that's all I practiced, and I'm just glad to get three straight top 10s, and that's the main important thing. Just to expand my points from the cut line and secure a spot in the Pro Series.
Absolutely, and not Darlington tonight, Rockingham. I've got the Podium 500, the Retro 500 on my mind. The Podium 500 is next year, my goodness. But James Pike can tell us more about the Retro 500, which is coming up here shortly. Thank you for joining us up here tonight, Jordy, and best of luck in the next race.
Thank you guys so much, and I would like to give a quick shout out to like everyone at like Out to Esports, Seth the Merchant for the amazing work on the set, Matt Dancing for like crew chiefing tonight, and like all my partners, Logitech, VRS, Race Tech, Cube Controls, iLiveries. It would not be possible without this great group of guys, so I have to thank them so much.
Jordy Lopez comes home P3, and yes, Jeff McConey, we'll talk a little bit about the Retro 500 here before we wrap up the broadcast. But you look at this race, we got some cautions for sure. We got a few breaks in there for sure, but we also got a green flag run in the middle that I thought was almost uncharacteristic of what you usually see here at Rockingham. And it was intriguing, I think, in some ways, because we saw some really talented drivers make their way towards the front. We saw Parker Retzlaff come within 5 laps of making the pit strategy call of the race, period, to get the win, only for everything to come undone with a late race yellow. And Colin Keister at the end of it come away with the best restarts to get the victory here.
Absolutely. It just really did not fall in Parker Retzlaff's favor. Briar LaPrade seemed to have the strategy there. They were expecting it to be 12 seconds quicker. Didn't quite work out that way. But all in all, it did end up being a great finish. And that's what all the viewers wanted. That's what I think a lot of the drivers wanted, was a really good finish. A little bit of mayhem always spices things up, but 200 laps at Rockingham, you got to have something to make it a little bit crazy here at the end.
And if you think this was crazy, it's crazy of a different kind we'll see in 2 weeks' time at the, shall we call it, New Texas Motor Speedway. I sort of think of old Coke, new Coke between the two, between the old Texas and the new Texas with the banking changes. But regardless of whether or not it's new, whether or not it's old, it's a 1.5 mile racetrack in these trucks. I think anybody who's done any official racing in them knows that that can be absolutely all over the place, depending on how it shapes out.
It really can be, and I think we're going to see a race that's all over the place. I think we're going to see the normal fast drivers up towards the front, but then I think we're also going to see drivers that have been mid-pack relatively through the middle of round number 2 sort of start to etch their way further back up to the front of the field, because Texas is a bit of a reset. You talk about unique tracks. We've been talking about it all season long heading into round number 2. We had Knoxville to start with, a little bit more of a baseline when we went to Homestead, but then we went right back into Watkins Glen and then Rockingham tonight. Texas is a bit more of, let's go back to basics. Let's go back to normal, so to speak, with the trucks that we're seeing in the Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series. I think we're going to see a lot of drivers take advantage of this, sort of use it as a reset if they're up towards the front in the points, get ready for the last 2 rounds at Bristol and Phoenix. But for those drivers that are further back trying to get above the cut line, they're going to use this as a, let's take what we know about intermediates. We have so much experience there, and let's use it, try and put together a good race, and who knows, we could see a first-time winner come in 2 weeks' time.
And final intermediate race of this 2021 eNASCAR Road to Pro qualifying iRacing series as well. That, I think, also bears repeating, especially for the drivers who are good at intermediates and who might not have had some success at a Vegas or a Homestead or a Charlotte earlier on in the year. We'll just have to wait and see. But before we get to that, plenty of events coming up in the world of Podium Esports throughout the next few weeks. Our coverage continues on Sunday night, the SimMax Cup Series powered by MPI from Martinsville Speedway. Coverage begins at 9:15 p.m. Eastern on the Podium Esports Twitch channel. Then the second to last race of the season for the Monday Night Racing playoff set, Auto Club Speedway, using the cars in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, a favorite combination amongst the drivers and fans alike. That broadcast starts with pre-race at 7:45 p.m. Eastern on the Podium 2 Twitch channel, the Podium Facebook and YouTube pages, and the Monday Night Racing Twitter page. Operation eMotorsport heads to Virginia International Raceway next Tuesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern start time for that on their YouTube channel. And then Jeff McConey asks, so we'll deliver. It's the final qualifying race of the Retro 500, the 1987 stock cars in Darlington under the sun for a third of the distance of the feature race that will be run on September 6th. And the top 10 finishers not already qualified for the Retro 500 will make their way into the feature on Monday night, Labor Day, September 6, 2021, in the ultimate test of old school stock car racing. That race and the feature broadcast on twitch.tv/Podium Esports. And if you're interested in signing up, head to podiumesports.com/retro 500 for more information, or use the chat command !retro 500 to sign up today. Then, following that race and that broadcast, we've got more action coming your way because it doesn't end. We've got the Jim Beaver Esports Short Course World Cup, or rather Triple Crown, from Lime Rock, Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Podium 2 Twitch channel. And then the MSRA Premier Series heads to Daytona International Speedway, their final race of the regular season, 8 p.m. start time, Saturday night, August 28th on the Podium 2 Twitch channel, as well as the Podium Facebook and YouTube and Twitter pages. That will do it for our coverage of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from the virtual Rockingham Speedway. For our team at Podium Esports, Gary Sexton, Cisco Scaramuza, and John Theodore. For our man behind the social media posts, Eric Messer. For our producer, Ryan Bauer. Camera builder, Dougie Beard. Man on pit road this evening, Justin Princeton. For my colleagues in the booth, Josh Lee and Jeff McConey, I am James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series from Rockingham, and we will see you 2 weeks from tonight at the virtual Texas Motor Speedway.